Rockville, today is May 5th, 2025, and we'll begin meeting 12-25. Please join me as you're able in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Sarah Taylor Farrell will now move to agenda review. Are there any changes?
Madam Mayor and council members, we did revise the agenda for the mock agenda to include the 45 minutes for District 17 presentation for next week's agenda.
Thank you. Tune in next week. Mr. Mihalik.
Mayor Ashton, members of City Council, good evening. I think we're all recovering from a super busy weekend. We're all out in force. You know, we had Skate Jam, we had the Native Plant Sale, we had the Arts Festival downtown. People were everywhere, including the council and people in this room. But boy, staff was out in spades working with our not-for-profit partners to making this all happen. I just want to acknowledge all their hard work. Rec and Park team, Police Department, Public Works, everybody was out there. It was really cool to have such a wonderful weekend. I also want to acknowledge the Rec and Park team again for being a finalist. Let me stress again, a finalist for the National Gold Medal Award for Excellence for Rec and Park Department. That is a national award and is from the American Academy for Parks and Recreation Administrators. We all know that we have an amazing Rec and Park team, but when you have a national organization of peers that recognize the city of Rockville for their amazing team, that's noteworthy. And that's why I'm announcing it to you tonight. Maybe they'll win the whole thing. Stay tuned. We'll find out. And then lastly, not next week Thursday, but the Thursday after, May 15th is Bike to Work Day. You know, proud tradition in Rockville of doing all kinds of activities, including a number of pit stops throughout the city. There'll be opportunities to have drinks and snacks and T-shirts and other fun giveaways. And we expect thousands of people to participate in that. And if people are interested, they can go onto our website and find out more. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know I speak on behalf of my colleagues when I want to say echo the thanks that you gave to staff. Incredible work all weekends. We were out there with you all and really appreciate not only the day of work that they did, but all the planning and even rescheduling due to rain and Mother Nature. So thank you for that. I also wanted to note, in addition to Bike to Work, there's Bike to School. And on that note, wanted to also thank Rockville City Police Department and Rockville Bike Hub for working with Maryvale to start one of our first school education programs for students to learn about safe biking. And since you talked about big events, Hometown Holidays will be back in Rockville Town Center. So feel free, it's okay. So we're super excited about that. And I also want to acknowledge the work. You'll see some nice art blooming around Town Center. So please enjoy. Okay, all right. We'll now move on to community forum. This is the time for everyone to share their feedback, ideas, and testimonies before the mayor and council. Please address the mayor and council in a civil and courteous manner, as well as be respectful to members of the audience. Everyone will be allowed 3 minutes, and we ask that you stick to your time. There is a stop clock in front of you. Please use it. Please state your name and whether you live in the city of Rockville. You will hear an audible beep at the end of your time. Please wrap up. We welcome you to join, and I know I'm going to call from folks who have signed up in advance. I also want to acknowledge that people have sent in written testimony. If you would like to speak after those who have signed up in advance, please raise your hand. First, welcome former Mayor Susan Hoffman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. It's wonderful to see you. It's wonderful to be in this room. It's always been one of my happy places. So, good evening. I come before you this evening as a person proud to call Rockville my home, as a resident of nearly 37 years who has and continues to serve our fellow Rockvillians, and as an activist concerned with a matter before the mayor and council. During the period of time I had the honor to serve as both mayor and council member, the mixed-use retail and residential Rockville Town Center was developed. The town center got off to a strong start and thrived. Over the ensuing years, Town Center experienced some ups and downs, including the Great Recession. The internal-facing design proved to be a challenge. The market has shown that the ratio of residential housing to retail proved to be less robust than was required for Rockville Town Center to thrive. In recent years, attention has been paid to the declining economic health of Town Center. Community outreach conducted by the mayor and council, city staff, and citizens associations throughout Rockville have shed a light on this important investment made by the city. In summary, the overwhelming consensus underscored and highlighted during our most recent election supports the need for additional residential housing adjacent to Town Center and along Rockville Pike, Route 355. Personally, I am delighted at the clarity with which my fellow residents understand the issue and are prepared to move forward. However, the proposal now before the mayor and council does not reflect the most recent zoning decisions in support of Rockville Town Center, nor the recommended solutions developed to strengthen the economic well-being of Town Center. In fact, it will result in a failure to improve its economic viability and will return Rockville to its weakened anti-business reputation. In particular, I'm very concerned about the rezoning of mixed-use commercial and mixed-use transition properties in the West End area to a new mixed-use residential office zone, which could apply either height transition requirements or layback slopes to adjacent Rockville Town Center properties. This rezoning and application of either height transition requirements or layback slopes to adjacent Rockville Town Center properties will be most problematic because it will reduce the use of Rockville Town Center properties for the residential density, which the mayor and council has already established for these town center areas and zones. These height transition proposals seek to weaken the great work the council and city staff have done to plan for the future of Rockville Town Center. I also am very concerned about any expansion of height transition requirements or layback slopes to adjacent Rockville Town Center properties where no such setbacks or layback slopes exist under the current code. We cannot take steps forward towards increasing the necessary density of Rockville Town Center, but then only take steps backward through expansion of height transition requirements or layback slopes to adjacent Rockville Town Center properties. I'm running out of time, so I will cut to the chase. In this current economic climate, why would Rockville want to send a message to existing property owners that we would limit their use of their own property and deter people from investing in Rockville? I respectfully urge you to oppose this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, welcome William Mega? Maya, thank you.
William Meyer, 804 Leverton Road, which I am a Rockville resident. I want to thank the mayor and council for reaching out to staff and having the get-together on the 26th of April at Hungerford Civic Association to discuss the ZOR and map amendment process. And I would ask that you consider the email that was sent to you on the 26th of April, which I now understand has been received based on the listing in the quick reference guide tonight. So changing the 27 acres of Woodmont Country Club property along Wooten Parkway from R400 to RMD 25 is not appropriate if the future access points cannot be the existing curb cuts in Wooten Parkway. As I said in my email, some history back in late 1990, staff strongly recommended that the future curb cuts be limited, one of which was the exit from the office or from the shopping center. And then when the city had to pay an exorbitant amount of money to Woodmont Country Club for the cutoff parcel, which became the townhouses, they of course rezoned that so that the townhouses could be built and then had to provide access to those townhouses. I spoke with the mayor at Sunday's Village Gathering and now know that my March 20th email to you regarding senior reference credit has been received by staff, and the staff apparently was working on a response, which I did receive late this afternoon. Mayor and council needs to have a policy that communications to you are acknowledged in a timely manner such as when you do an online report of concern and use the city's form center, you get a reply back that has been received. And many times that reply also shows who it's being sent to for further action. The refuse collection resolution on page 45 of your staff document says the service charge may not be reduced or suspended for vacancy or any other reason. What is the meaning of the any other reason, and is that condition in all resolutions that you pass that set rates for collection of funds from property owners? Any questions? Thank you very much.
Welcome, James Murdoch.
Hey there, how's it going? So I'm a Rockville resident. I live in the Twinbrook community right off Pinneberg Ave. And our property butts up like right up against Rock Creek Park. And over the last couple of years, the bamboo infestation that's taken over the park has just gotten incredibly out of hand. And it's like encroaching into like neighboring properties as well as my own. And I reached out to the Forestry Department, City of Rockville. They referred me to the county. County weed warriors basically said, we can't handle it. Even if we train you on how to remediate it, we're not going to let you, just because of dangers with the splintering and the nature of the park and people using it. And from there, I sent a letter to the Office of the Attorney General basically asking for help. And they referred me back to the county executive office. And then I followed up with them a couple times, and I'm just getting no answers. So I was basically just coming here to ask to see, are there any programs for remediation, specifically concerning Rock Creek Park and the bamboo infestation, or are there resources that I could participate in to help remediate that? That was basically it. Just wanted to ask for help.
Thank you. I'm just going to, for these kinds of questions, see if a member of staff, is that Barak Matite, can meet with you in the back?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your testimony.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome, Jeffrey Gantz.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you once again for allowing me the opportunity to address you regarding the Montrose neighborhood. I first want to thank you all for listening. It is obvious that steps are being taken based on our testimony that we've been given here, whether it's increased enforcement on Evelyn and Rollins, listening from the zoning and trying to work with us on that, but there's still work to be done. I feel like we are a neighborhood under attack with so much going on. We've got rezoning, we've got Congressional Complete Street Study, we have the East Halpine and Halpine Road and East Jefferson Street bike lane study going on. There's a lot going on, none of it in conjunction with one of another, all separate, but all important to our neighborhood because they all impact our neighborhood. We're about to have Wegmans opening June 25th, I believe it is, creating more traffic in our area. The recent traffic studies show that traffic has increased in our neighborhood. Speed is a problem, and you all are taking steps to address it, but unfortunately, I don't think it's enough. That said, in regards to the rezoning, the Martha Terrace property is still being recommended for this increased zoning new designation. Under no circumstances should this property on Martha Terrace be allowed to be increased from its current zoning designation. If you haven't been in there in person to see this property, please come visit our neighborhood. I know there's a meeting, I believe, going on May 15th for a walking. That's going to be along Rollins Avenue. But while you're there, check out the Martha Terrace property. If you were living in the single-family homes there, you would not want the development across the street that is being proposed to be allowed in that neighborhood. The Martha Terrace Street doesn't allow for the increased traffic. Rollins doesn't allow for the increased traffic. Evelyn Drive doesn't allow for the increased traffic that this zoning would create. The Congressional Towers and Rollins Park Apartments, it's going to happen. I get it. Martha Terrace should not, under any circumstances. Just appealing to you once again to hear us about this, come visit us about this, come see us about this, because it would be a detriment to our community and our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, John Duroff.
Sure. Good evening. I am a resident of the city of Rockville. I live over in Newmark Commons, and recently our street has been the subject of a remodel, something infrastructure with the sidewalks, and that's actually why I'm here. Because in redoing the sidewalks on Tegner Court and Tegner Way, they have raised the aprons of the driveways to actual curb level height. So if you can think about that when you're backing your car out of your driveway and you go thunk right down into the street. But more importantly, it is a danger to our children. In fact, I know of one child that was hurt over the weekend. I'm just waiting for my children, who are 12 and 9, to take a header over the curb into my driveway, as you know, they're not as careful as, say, a vehicle. And so, you know, I have reached out. Ken Brink came out to my house. Dan Stevens was there today. But I'm not the only one. Apparently, there was a little informal canvas. There were two people, two elderly couples that were trapped in their homes for 2 days because notice really was lacking about this entire project. So while we certainly recognize that, you know, sidewalks need to be upgraded, things need to happen, infrastructure, the engineering of this project leaves a lot to be desired. And it is really affecting the quiet enjoyment of our homes. And it's also, I think, creating a public nuisance. And, you know, it's a real problem. And as the council, I think it's important for you to know what the Department of Public Works is doing. I'm hopeful that, you know, the folks who were out at my house today will help us work with a solution, but it's not just me. And so while I don't really want to speak for all of my neighbors, I'm the only one who's here tonight. So I really would ask you to, you know, ask the Department of Public Works to rethink what they've done, because I think it's going to add wear and tear to my car, extra alignment, all of those things. Not to mention the fact my back is already starting to hurt after a weekend of driving over the curb, basically. So I appreciate the effort so far that, you know, the staff at DPW has put in, but really it shouldn't have happened this way. We should have had notice. There was no notice. And it's a real, it's a real fail. So thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to speak with a member of staff, there will be someone in the back to work with you and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome, David Weinstein.
Hello again. It's the Montrose Association. We're back. Really, I'm here, just as Jeffrey said, to say thank you, first of all. Councilmember Shaw came out for a walk. We had a nice walk with her. Thank you. I know Councilman Jackson, you're coming out. Unfortunately, I will be out of town on a previously scheduled trip, but welcome to the neighborhood. It's obviously you've been listening. I've been sitting in my office listening to the police cars, and my smile gets wider and wider every time they pull somebody over. So thank you all for that and policing that stop sign that people are running. I'll let the others in my neighborhood speak about the zoning. You're all well aware of our concerns about the traffic and the density and having a tall building across the street from some of these single-family houses. But really, thank you all for listening and for continuing to participate with us. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to note, we do listen. Actually, after the meeting, I met with our city manager to say, please go out and schedule a meeting and do the enforcement. So all of us, the entire body, we listen to all testimony and try to make sure that there's follow-up.
So it's obvious you have been. We thank you.
Thank you. All right. Welcome, Susan Zemsky.
Hi, I am a Rockville resident, clocking in at almost 40 years. I also would like to thank the people that we reached out to do a walk in the neighborhood, as Jeff mentioned. And for those of you who haven't gotten to us, or maybe we should get to you, we would really like to duplicate that. The concern is about the development in Section 10 on the Martha Terrace, the lower portion of that large Pollinger property. It's currently designated as residential, which we don't have a problem with, but we do have a problem with a higher density, higher height, and more traffic on streets that really were not built for two-way traffic. If you come to visit us, you'll see you come down the street and somebody's coming towards you and you have to pull over, and it's like a little dance that creates a traffic backup and not so safe sometimes. Again, we don't want the overdevelopment. We appreciate working with the staff, and we look forward to welcome you for a walkthrough, and I hope I'll be able to host it. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the staff for all the meetings that we've had with you, the responses to our needs, and that you're there. And we are very proud to live in the city, and we really want to retain the culture. I think one of the challenges is on 3 sides of our designated neighborhood is county, and there's a huge amount of development going on completely around us. Where in the Federal Plaza in the back where the Panera is, you might be familiar with that, they've already approved a large apartment building there, Wegmans, and there's a big, vast piece of property next to Wegmans that is also going to be developed, and people are cutting through our neighborhood. And it's not that we're not welcoming, it's just not built. The streets were not meant for that. So again, I want to thank you, and I want you to consider not just what is, but what's happening around us. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Natasha Hurwitz.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I want to thank Councilmember Shaw for coming out to the neighborhood. I'm a Montrose resident of Rockville. One of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention was in the actual comprehensive plan for zoning, zoning area 10, it specifically says at the beginning of the text about zoning recommendations to rezone the strip along the west side of East Jefferson Street, designated as CRM in the land use policy map from RMD 25, residential medium density, to MXCT mixed use corridor transition. And then it goes on a little bit more and it talks about some other things. What I think is important is that at the very beginning of that zoning recommendation, it specifically says we're talking about RMD 25 to MXCT. And later it talks about the whole parcel, but I think it's really unclear if the intent of the comprehensive plan was to have the section that they're talking about that's originally zoned, we believe, I think it's R75, which is residential homes, just like mirrored across the street from them. So I think what happened, but I could be wrong, is that when the comprehensive plan was moving forward and someone's creating the maps and we're thinking about what this area is supposed to look like, that it's a very large document. There were probably a lot of hands on it. I really don't think the intent was for that small parcel on Martha Terrace to be zoned mixed-use commercial. We do appreciate that the rest of the plot, the city zoning officials met with us last week. It was amazing. They have added a density requirement to that zone, which I believe they're going to present to you this evening. We completely appreciate that. That helps our neighborhood get a better sense of like how many people are we talking, how many units are we talking. But again, we just keep coming back to this idea that we just don't think that small parcel of land was really intended to be included in this mixed-use rezoning in this new zone, because it just, again, we welcome you to come visit our neighborhood. It just doesn't make any sense to put the same kind of density on that smaller parcel that we see in the other parts of the property. So I encourage you just to take an extra look at Zone 10, read that zoning recommendation, and just see for yourself if maybe we need to rethink the interpretation of that text. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the list of those who have signed up in advance. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Ashley Hoover. I'm the pastor at Jerusalem Mount Pleasant, 21 Wood Lane. I'm here to speak. You should have received our letter. Just wanted to thank you for receiving our letter, and also to lift up just a few points from our letter. Excuse me. We're in our 190th year as a church within the Rockville community, and we're writing to request the zoning for our properties on both Wood Lane and also on Beale Avenue to be not to be rezoned and keep them at the MXT zoning as opposed to rezoning them to RO, and in the Beale location to keep it at MXT instead of being rezoned to R60. We're making this request because property zoning changes would place barriers on our church and our ability to grow and do further development within our community. I'll just skip down to the very end that we are seeking just to have this maintain our current zoning. We've been very active in the community as well in feeding programs and community outreach, and so we would like to continue to have an opportunity to maintain the current zoning for our location, that we might do other improvements in the community with that unimproved land. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay. Thank you all for your testimony. Again, if anyone wants to talk to staff, and they'll be in the back should you need help. We'll now move on to our next part of the agenda. We have several items. Hold on here. For consent agenda. Okay. Does anyone want to pull or ask questions about any of these, or are you willing to approve all of them at once? Colleagues, Councilmember Valeri.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to pull, and I apologize, my internet is all of a sudden going down, the one regarding permitting fees.
Thank you.
What number is that?
I think it's A.
It's A. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, can we get a motion to approve B through E? And just to note what we are approving on consent, a resolution to amend master fees for community planning and development services. That is what is going to be pulled. B would be the adoption of a resolution to close completed capital improvement projects. There's a list in our brief book. Adoption of a resolution to establish the equivalent residential unit rate, calculating stormwater management and utility fees for sediment control and stormwater. Item D, adoption of resolution to establish a service charge rate for municipal refuse collection and establishing a charge for unreturned refuse and recycling carts. Item E, adoption of resolution to declare the official intent of the mayor and council to reimburse expenditures for certain projects from the proceeds of a tax-exempt obligations under U.S. Treasury income tax regulation, Section 1-1502. So we have B through E to approve. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Shaw. Do we have a second?
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilmember Fulton. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All right. It is unanimous. All right, now we'll move back over to item A, which relates to community development and planning fees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I generally on face don't have an issue per se with a minor inflationary increase. I do have a question though. If this is a inflationary increase, I think it translates still to residents in for an increased fee, what is the level of service that they are getting? And I think that we, unfortunately, are struggling through the perception that the permitting process is onerous, is non-responsive. I know that, we all realize on the dais that a very important part of economic development is a seamless permitting process. So I wanted to kind of get a sense from Mr. City Manager, how are we looking at achieving some of those economic development goals in regards to, making our permitting, residential or commercial permitting process better, improved, so that when folks do see things like a modest increase, again, makes sense, but if the services are not getting better, I don't necessarily know how we can in some ways justify that.
Thank you for the question. We've done multiple things, Councilmember Valeri, many of which is with the help from this council. If you recall, we had a number of work sessions over the past year related to FAST. And again, those FAST improvements are identifying ways for us to streamline our development review process, cut out some unnecessary steps to make it a little bit more seamless, smoother, and actually shorter. And I know council supported most of those recommendations. In addition to that, later on tonight, hopefully, you'll be adopting the budget, and we'll be adding staff to allow us to do quicker inspections and building permit reviews, which will also speed things up. So we're doing those things in a comprehensive way to make sure that our development review process is not only very predictable, but very fast, efficient, and also provides good customer service.
Thank you. And just as a point of clarification, if it's okay, this is across the board permitting. Like, we're looking at not only small scale and larger commercial permitting, but also residential and inspections and so forth.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. This is an issue after my own heart. I always hear that the time is money and people want to move things forward. So I appreciate all the efforts that staff has undertaken with our request to really see how we can streamline, improve, and make this process better. I know I've been in touch with you, but just for the public's awareness, I want to make sure that the review times are also updated. So it would be helpful to have those go into effect by July 1 if possible. And I sent an email to you and my colleagues as a follow-up from early communications in March and April about that. And if nothing else, also to note on that review times that there's a link to the Quick Start guidelines as well, so that people know that there's a FAST program that they can apply to. I've recently encountered folks who missed that and did not apply to that program. Any comments, Mr. City Manager? Okay, so good. You're good with all those things. Perfect. All right. Now, will anyone make a motion to approve consent agenda item A? Councilmember Valeri.
I move to adopt A.
Do we have a second? Councilmember Jackson, seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you. It's unanimous. We'll now move over to action item 11A, which is a mayor and council briefing on project plan amendment PJT 2025-00021, an application to amend the plan development for Rockville Center to permit a change of use from office to residential and or commercial up to 550 dwelling units at 255 Rockville Pike in the PDRCI Plan Development Rockville Town Center, Inc. Welcome. Welcome, Kimia, to present an update, and I believe the applicant might be, or is it just, are you going to just do the update alone?
Good evening. The applicant should be attending. I haven't seen them in person.
Okay, I was looking as well. If you need us to take a break at some point after to make sure the applicant is here, let us know.
Sounds good.
Thank you. I see him just arriving. All right.
Just about time.
Just on time.
There we go. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Kimia Zolfagarian, a principal planner with Community Development and Planning Services. This is a project plan amendment briefing for 255 Rockville Pike. The purpose of this briefing is to introduce the proposal to the mayor and council and provide an opportunity for preliminary feedback. The subject property is located at 255 Rockville Pike. It is bounded by Monroe Street, Rockville Pike, East Middle Lane, and Promenade Park to the south. And on this graphic aerial image of the subject property and surroundings, you can also see the Rockville Metro pedestrian bridge. Some project information. Again, the subject property is located at 255 Rockville Pike. It is located in Planning Area 1 of the town center. The land area is about 2.5 acres. The current land use is office, commercial, and residential mix. And the zoning is PDRCI, Plan Development Rockville Center, Inc., with the equivalent zoning district of MXTD. The applicant is proposing to amend the approved PD planned development to permit additional uses. Currently, there is an office existing on the site, and the existing approval includes office and a commercial component that in the original approved PD would be a retail or restaurant. They are proposing a phased redevelopment of the existing office building to construct a multifamily building with up to 550 units with a maximum height of 217 feet, or the adaptive reuse of the existing office building to allow additional commercial uses. The pre-application meeting for this project was filed on December 20th, and the area meeting that was associated with that was on October 29th, 2024. The project plan amendment and concurrent level 2 site plan application was filed on March 7th. The post-application area meeting was held on March 18th. The Planning Commission briefing was held on April 9th, and the applicant DRC meeting was held on April 24th. The next steps are to finalize a review of the project plan amendment application and level 2 site plan application. The Planning Commission would then make a recommendation. The Mayor and Council would proceed with a decision, which would include a public hearing, discussion, and possible adoption. And then the Planning Commission may consider a decision on the site plan application. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you want to have us ask questions at this point, or does the applicant want to share some opening statements?
The applicant also does have a presentation.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Elliott.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Just waiting to make sure they've got the presentation queued up. Mayor, members of the council, it's nice to be with you. My name is Bob Elliott. I represent the ownership of 255 Rockville Pike. I am also a Rockvillian. For the record, while we're talking, it's 5525. We're talking about 255. Say that 10 times fast. So Kimmy gave a great overview of the project. You see the existing building here, view from roughly the metro station. Keep this image in the back of your mind. This will come back up in a few minutes. And go ahead, Kimmy, go to the next slide, please. We acquired the property officially on, I think, March 18th, 2024 at auction. We were the buyer at the second auction. So this is a property that was originally most recently the county's permitting office until 2021. It went vacant. Had been dark. The prior owner out of New York attempted to repurpose the building, did not find a buyer, defaulted on their loan, and ultimately gave it back to the bank, where it went to auction twice before we acquired it. Being a Rockvillian and hoping to make something happen here, my firm acquired it with the idea of doing residential. For obvious reasons, we can go to the next slide, Kimia. It's a great anchor to the east end of the town square. It's obviously immediately opposite the metro station. The bridge from the metro actually lands on our property, and via an easement, you go through that property along the southern edge of the building down onto Montgomery Avenue, which is not quite on axis, but reasonably close. You pass by the movie theater, you would make a right-hand turn up towards the town square. So there is sort of this ultimate urban connection for the possibility of this building. It goes through Promenade Park, which is again of interest to us. But how do we reinforce that main spine? How do we enhance the visitor approach? These are the kind of things that we were looking at. How do we make a better experience for Rockvillians, for visitors to the city of Rockville? And so next slide, Kimia. So when we acquired the building, our hope was to do the piece on the left, which is roughly 300 units of multifamily. This is 5 stories of stick built. I'm going to show you a diagram in a second, but the idea is to repurpose the existing building. This is actually the last existing piece of the old Rockville Mall. There are those 2 floors of office were originally the mall, retail mall. They were converted into an office building when the county government occupied it for roughly 20 odd years. Our original plan was to take down those 2 levels, leave the 3 levels of existing garage, one of which is entirely below grade, roughly 440 parking spaces, then come back atop that with 5 levels of wood frame housing. wood frame being more cost-effective than concrete. You will see in the project plan that we are proposing 2 phases, one of which we think could ultimately be built today, and then one that may ultimately be able to be built in the future, so a sort of a more signature tower that would be closer to the metro. You all are aware of the fact that Rockville and WMATA have been in extensive discussions about the possibility of adding height and density, and of course, most recently, you have done the town center plan, which of course ultimately speaks the possibility of additional height even for this site. 217 feet is what was vested as part of that PD many, many years ago. So the PD, just as a quick reminder, was roughly 450-odd thousand feet, roughly 37,000 feet of which could have been retail. The envelope that was planned for this site could have been significantly taller. The market's changed a lot in less than 15 months. Most recently, I don't know, let's call it the last 100, 110 odd days. It's nearly impossible to predict what the construction market is in this country or may be for the next 3.5 odd years. When you've got to do the trades for a building that's got 15 different disciplines with project parts and pieces, it makes look like buying a car and manufacturing a car look easy. So we are asking for something a little different. This shows the possibility of a repurposing of the existing building, taking the building and converting it from an office use into a retail use. What that retail use may be is yet to be determined. Our hope is in working with your planning and zoning department to identify what the most theoretically intensive set of uses may ultimately be for that, so that we can plan for the transportation component accordingly. Because effectively what happens here is that once you tip over probably 60 or 70,000 odd feet, we create a trip count that ultimately gets into the idea that we have to do a trip count analysis for this property. That will take some time. This was not originally on the radar for what we wanted to do. Our hope and our strong preference would obviously be to do residential, but something needs to happen with this building, and sooner is better. So we are asking for a modification of the plan from what we originally asked, which was the multifamily, and what I will spend the vast majority of the rest of this time talking about. But this is a fairly simple change in use from an office entitlement with 40,000 feet of retail into the possibility of 160,000 feet of retail. So that building you saw at the beginning is effectively what it may be. There may be some modifications to entrances or the exterior, or it may get some embellishments or a paint job or something else. We don't know what that may be, but we are optimistic that we could make something happen here. And candidly, a significant retail presence wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, while I'd personally rather see it happen around the town square and around the park and around the ice rink every year. Bringing life to this city and to pops this along the metro station would be a good thing, in our opinion. So this is a change in plan from what we originally came to you about, but it is part of the project plan nonetheless. Next slide, Kimia. So this is the thesis of why we bought the building. So in the upper left, you see the project as it is. Those 2 floors in red would be the 2 floors that we had may intend to remove. You would take those 2 off and you get to the lower left drawing, which leaves you with 440 parking spaces on 3 levels, 2 of which are partially above grade and 1 of which is entirely below grade. On top of that, as part of not just this project plan, but we've also submitted a a level 2 site plan for this first phase of the project plan, which is plus or minus 300 units, 5 stories, stick built, 3 courtyards along the promenade and 2 that face towards the west. And then we are also, as part of this project plan, suggesting that there is ultimately a second phase that could be built over a portion of that sort of little L-shaped wing there, that orange tower that could ultimately rise from that ultimately would allow for another 250 units. In the upper right of that lower right drawing, you also see the original PD drawing, which kind of shows you that volume. That was the original PD plan that could have potentially been added to this property in roughly the same place that we are showing a tower. So while we don't believe that is economically viable today, since we're here, since we're in front of you, we're looking for speed to market, we thought it would be easier to come through with everything at one time. So, and so here is a plan. You see this kind of, we'll call it a 3 shape with a little sort of dog leg. That little piece off to the side is ultimately where there could be that vertical tower. The courtyards face to the west, sort of towards the town square. We're showing one that is more of a landscape courtyard, one that might be a pool. Along the southern edge there, along the promenade, we are showing a potential courtyard to create some relief along that sort of edge to create some interest along the promenade. Next slide, Kimia. And these are a series of different vignette views showing you the view from the metro, from north on Rockville Pike, but sort of just to give you a sense and a flavor for what this building may look like from a massing perspective. And if we go to the next one, I think we show the first phase and the second phase sort of combined from those sort of same views or similar views, so you get a sense for how that impacts things and how that maybe relates to 51 Monroe over off to the right side. Next slide. So again, this sort of shows you the thesis of the design, which is those 3 levels of gray are the existing parking garage upon which we set the building. You see sort of, this is the upper drawing is a section through that sort of 3. You see 3 sort of smaller 5-story vertical towers. In the middle of that is an amenity court, because in order to connect those 2 courts, our expectation is that the amenities, sort of those public spaces being business centers or game rooms, et cetera, would be an opportunity for residents on both sides to kind of flow through between that and the pool. The lower section, never mind. We'll keep moving forward. So we're back. Same put. Okay. All right. So here we go back to the architecture. The upper drawing, you see that there is sort of that vertical tower element that kind of separates that. You see kind of the 2 masses on either side. Elevations are a little deceptive here. Those are actually set back fairly significantly in plane because of the L-shaped site. But what we're trying to do is break down the size and scale of these blocks into something that's a little more digestible. The vertical element there of that tower sort of calls attention to itself along the pike. The lower elevation there, that appears to be the elevation through Middle Lane. And again, the piece where those 2 sort of white verticals are much closer to you, and the piece on the left is significantly further back. This is the lower portion of that sort of open triangular space along Rockville Pike. So again, elevations are a little deceptive. As we get into sort of future presentations, we will actually show you real renderings associated with this. But at this level, at this moment, this is all that we're required to show. Let's keep going. And this shows you, the upper one shows you the 3 elevations of those sort of ends of the 3 there. We're trying to identify that and show architecture that is all related, but creates sort of 3 different visual elements along Monroe Street. And the bottom rendering shows you the courtyard along the promenade. So the 2 pieces that directly front the promenade, and you can kind of see that's kind of ghosted there in the background. That obviously sets back inside the courtyard, but that's the promenade elevation. I believe that's, project schedule. So from a project schedule perspective, in the 4th quarter, we made most of these submissions. We're now through the first quarter where we made that post-application meeting. 2nd quarter, we briefed Planning Commission, I think it was 3 odd weeks ago now. We're here before you tonight. After that is the recommendation for the project plan amendment, and then obviously further hearings with both you and the Planning Commission for approval by you on the project plan and approval by the Planning Commission for the site plan. While that takes us probably into the 3rd quarter of 2025, from that moment, we then have to actually go into architectural design and planning for whichever scheme that may be. Assuming it was much more of the apartment building, that's probably at least 6 to 9 months of significant architectural design, planning for that, permitting for that, budgeting for that, et cetera, which takes us into 2026, which again, as we're all aware, is anyone's guess where we'll be at that moment. So that's where we're at. Thank you for the opportunity in front of you. I'm, of course, happy to answer questions. I know, Madam Mayor, you sent a number of them to Kimia and John earlier today. I'm happy to answer any of those, either reading from them or if you'd like to ask them directly.
I would just say thank you very much. We really appreciate the opportunity to consider adaptive reuse. Ultimately, we want the space filled. It doesn't do anyone good, the city good, to have it vacant. So just wanted to start saying thank you for thinking of creative ideas to invest in the city. We really appreciate it. I know the entire council really values economic development and housing, and I think this project could help with either or both of those. So I know you may not hear this often, but thank you for considering the project. I did have a couple of questions that I shared earlier. You kind of proactively answered some of them in terms of the height and why not doing the phases now. And I understand that there's a lot of national uncertainty in terms of the materials cost for doing projects like these. So I understand that you're planning ahead, but that the timing of things are not clear given you have to finance all this. So just wanted to acknowledge that. I was wondering, given the challenges and uncertainty at the national level, have you been in touch with our team about potential programs at the state, county, or city level to help move a project forward? We did move forward with goals, housing goals for Rockville Town Center. I think we all want to see more housing here in the city in a way that's done well, supporting our current and new residents. I know that changing to retail is maybe an intermediary step, but I just wanted to see if you've had a chance to connect and learn more about what could be given the challenging financing for these kinds of projects.
Well, I'm not aware. So this is largely market rate housing, which ultimately has probably a 15% MPDU requirement. I'm not aware of any supplemental programs that would allow us to receive funds for that. There's, to my knowledge, no pilots, TIFs, or anything that's available either currently at the county may be taking something through right now that may allow for adaptive reuse redevelopment, either on an accelerated basis or to receive pilot funds for taking that sort of incremental tax component and abating that over a period of time. I don't know if you've been following that with the county. Obviously, that applies to the county, but not necessarily the city of Rockville. So it is ultimately the council's decision whether they want to follow through and do something similar. You could take very similar legislation to that. I think that's good legislation to consider. I would advise, and I think one thing that sets Rockville apart, and I'd be remiss if I don't say this, is the fact that, and not everyone may agree with me on this, but the fact that you have not capped rent increases for the city of Rockville actually makes Rockville, as well as Gaithersburg, two sort of prime development opportunities within the county. So my opinion is that the county is largely redlined for development opportunities because that makes us significantly less attractive than delivering new residential either just across the river in Washington, D.C. It just makes the investment community very leery of coming to a city if they don't know what that rent growth may be, even if it's new development, even if it's 23 years out. So I offer that as when you consider legislation, whether or not it's good for the city or bad for the city, it's important to consider what those benefits may be to the city. And I'm obviously a Rockvillian and I want to make things happen. So I'm appreciative of the fact that you all have not enacted that, but I would say take a look at that because I do think it would be a good thing. And I do think a project like ours might qualify for the same sorts of partial adaptive reuse of a project for either accelerated timeframe, but ultimately you have to decide what you want to do with the tax component of that.
Okay, thank you. I will just put as a request for staff just to scan state level programs that might help. I know that there was a site readiness program. That one is 5 acres. This one is 3, but maybe there's something else we can dig up, or even working with Medco or Tedco. So we'll just do some homework as well to see what we can do. And thank you for sharing your feedback on what you're experiencing on your side from national to local. The other question I just wanted to ask, and I have others, but I'll pause so others can ask questions as well. We did approve the Rockville Town Center Master Plan. I noticed that this document references the 2014 PD. Now with the master plan for Rockville Town Center, there's greater height for that phase 2. So I'm wondering, as before you go to Planning Commission, this proceeds with that lower height, if you are interested or are you aware of what the higher height opportunities are?
So when we filed, that had not been finalized. So first, despite the fact that you have entitled or have changed the regulations for the town center, our project is still subject to the PD component, which at the moment does cap at 217, which I think was higher than it was previously. I believe under the new legislation, we could go to 235, possibly 335, should we decide to increase the MPDU requirement from 15 to 20%. Obviously, when and if that were to happen, if we were to build that second phase, we would think that we might actually consider that, whether that would be at 335 or even, I could say, 317 under the existing piece, right? We might be able to get an extra floor between 317 and 335. But I would anticipate that when and if that went to site plan, that one could very easily modify the project plan at that time. I don't believe what we submitted to you today effectively caps us at only going to 217. I believe that we'd be allowed to kind of increase that extra 100 feet under your existing regulations, regardless of whether we said 217, 235, or ultimately that plus
Thank
100.
you. Yeah, and I think the base height in the plan is a little slightly higher than what you have in the PD. Just to confirm for staff in terms of the process, do they have to make note of this in the site plan for approval, or can they come back during phase 2 and very easily with no additional time added, make the change?
I will have to verify with the zoning manager how it would work with the PD and the new Rockville Town Center heights, so we would be able to get back to you on that.
Thank you. Yeah, this council is trying to streamline, make things easier and faster.
And we're happy to make the modification if they'll let us.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, any questions? Councilmember Valeri.
Hello. So I have two questions. I'll start with the fun one first. So you talked a lot about, and I love the idea of the courtyard is to kind of open up because it is kind of just a very brutalist wall right there. Are you thinking about any sort of similar aesthetic change on the Rockville Pike side as part of the new proposed redevelopment?
So the Rockville Pike side is a touch more challenging. County is currently planning BRT, 2 different phases, one of which is going down Veers Mill and up towards the college, and one that goes from Bethesda up towards the college. So there are 2 BRTs phases that will be running right in front of our property. Working with the city and the county, we believe that both new BRT stations will be located on the north side of Middle Lane. County has asked us to accommodate a very significant stormwater management facility on our property. To the tune they had I think, roughly for 2,400 square feet of stormwater. We have created a plan that we have shared with both the county and the city that shows a traffic circle and a turnaround that allows for about 1,700 feet of stormwater, a fairly significant redesign of the landscaping and sidewalk treatment there, as well as, I think, for the benefit of our fire department, allows the fire department to actually enter onto the property and exit off the property in a very safe manner, which is not actually capable right now on the existing 255 design. So we have taken a lot of different things into consideration, but because all of those items are moving parts and pieces by the way, I've left out the state because this is technically a state road. Everything's easy in development. So we have a concept. It has been shared. We would anticipate that would ultimately be enacted, whether it's by us or perhaps by the county, because this is kind of one of those first mover moments when, and if we have a design, about the only first 8 or 10 feet are actually off property, and most of this other land is actually ours. So we made it very clear to both city planning as well as county planning, we're team players, but no one party should dominate this discussion. You're using our land needs certain things, particularly access. The address for this property is 255 Rockville Pike. It has and will remain the primary entrance for this building. We have a garage entrance there and a potential for a significant pedestrian entrance there. We're open to giving them the county the stormwater facility. We're open to working with the BRT piece and making sure we create a nice green and appropriately landscaped site as long as we retain the access we need. So a complicated answer to your question, but yes, we are working on that.
It's a complicated project, so I appreciate that. Not to add to the complication, it's my last question. I think the struggle and the challenge, you mentioned several of them, which is that it's the state road, the Rockville Pike 355 is a state road, that we often have to work with the county. But in looking at the safety considerations of Middle Lane and 355, which I've been following for a while now, the width of the sidewalk on Middle Lane, talk to me about what possibly we could do
to
So
even widen that
I'll be
slightly?
very direct. When we started looking at this opportunity, we came to planning and zoning out of the gate and said, this is kind of one of those weird chicken and egg situations, except for the fact that the building's been there first. And unfortunately, just on the other side of that wall is a parking ramp. And moving that parking ramp and moving the building isn't really an option. That said, we have been working with the transportation team to potentially remove a transportation lane there. So it's currently 3 lanes, 2 lanes through 1 right-hand turn lane. Remove the existing right-hand turn lane, create 1 through lane, 1 through right-hand turn lane, and widen the sidewalk. So that could exist. That would create some additional relief along that frontage. And, ultimately, what do you do with that blank louvered wall? The louver and the air intake is ultimately needed, but could one paint that? Could one make it a little more artistic? Could one remove the louver, thin it out? I'm not necessarily saying that, one wants to look at the inside of a parking garage, but there are a lot of different artistic treatment one might be able to use, whether it's decorative metal. You look at the screening of what's happened in parking garages over the last 10, 20 years, and you see some incredibly gorgeous, sometimes backlit, decorative structures. One would like to think that that provides a fairly unique opportunity to make something perhaps of more of an artistic statement. A lot of that will ultimately get refined as part of this process, but yes, we are looking at middle lane. Yes, we have identified ways to solve that problem. Ultimately, this is the challenge, is it's not just us, it's the city, and it's not just the city, it's the state. So we hope that the city will have our back in terms of suggesting that we remove that lane and, sort of puts its pressure to the state to say it's really important to us that we, as long as they agree that the flow through to the metro station is appropriate, that we could remove the transit lane and widen the sidewalk.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Echoing the thanks for the presentation.
Dr. Miles, I'm sorry. I think we just need to get your audio up a little bit.
Okay. Are you able to hear me now?
That's much better. Thank you.
It is? Okay. Thanks for the presentation. I had a couple of questions. The first, looking back, the residential, the height was 83 feet. Is that because it's stick built?
Correct. Under the existing code, you can go to 85. It's fire truck access, effectively what limits that.
Understood. Second question is, perhaps it may be more for staff. I apologize. It's raining pretty hard over here. Is curious how those student generation numbers were generated. It's a perennial question we have with regard to new development of housing in particular. As an example, the principal of a school that feeds that from which students from Pike and Rose come, they said they were going to get 10 students. They ended up with 3 bus loads. So I'm just curious how the student generation numbers were generated. That's all.
I'm not sure at this point that we trip over that, and I can't speak to necessarily how we do trip generation on that, but I think it's probably the fairly standard formula on that, which is a little housing that generates less children than, say, townhouses or single family. But
thank you. Dr. Miles, do you have any other questions? Okay.
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Van Grack.
Thank you so much for what you're doing for the city and the project. So I understand you're looking for kind of a change in what you're looking to do for your first phase here, and more focusing on the retail. And so
it's optionality, to be clear.
Okay, so
it's one or the other.
So that was my question. What you're looking for us is the ability for you to decide whether you're going to start with one or the other.
Correct. To do one or the other, because the retail may end up shelving the residential opportunity for a decade, depending on what the retail component could be.
And so that's the next question. If you go with that alternative proposal, that retail, is that still going to allow you to do some of these other project parts that you're talking about with the residential and the tower, or will that preclude that because of the retail build that you're doing?
The way we're thinking of this, we would say they're either or at this moment. With the right opportunity, and I don't know what that might be, if there was a significant enough retail, one could plan for, 3 floors of residential over a retail scheme, but that's just too much optionality at this point. So based on current market conditions and candidly some interest along the way from various parties from time to time, we kind of forced ourselves to go back and say, what if we did an adaptive reuse? And what if we did a more significant adaptive reuse than just the 40-odd thousand feet to plan? We don't know if it would be a single user or multiple users or what have you. And one of the biggest challenges is trying to figure out what that general retail use may be, what that trip generation could be. One large single user theoretically doesn't generate nearly the trips if I did 5 or 6 different smaller retail components in there. So we are going to take the approach that we go for the maximum transit volume that could be there so that we plan accordingly, which ultimately means that we probably have to study roughly 16 intersections in a 4x4 grid, which will be a lot of fun because we get to go all the way down towards Ferris Mill Road. So you can imagine, is it ideal? Of course, it's not ideal, but if that's where the market is today, we'd like to do something ahead of 2028. But I mean, honestly, we just can't handicap where things will be. So not our preference, but when we were already in and we had the necessary interest, we came to planning staff and we appreciate their flexibility in suggesting the fact that we have a project plan that allows for some level of optionality.
Gotcha. So what you're saying is, listen, as financial changes can happen on a monthly basis right now, what you're saying is you want to break ground in by 2026. You want to start that construction.
We'd like to start something.
And you need the options and the flexibility to do that given the market environment.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fulton.
Thank you. I think you might have answered this, but I just want to clarify. Your sort of drop dead date, your trigger date, your pick option A or option B is somewhere pre-2026.
Don't know, to be quite candid. We may, first off, to be clear at the moment, we don't necessarily have a retailer and we're still a few years from the residential. We will probably we're continuing a retail marketing effort. At the same time, we're continuing the residential piece. And until we have a direction one way or the other, we probably just keep advancing both things to meet the market and to be ready to do anything. It's not ideal, but we are blessed to have investors that allow us to be nimble enough to consider 2 different things at one time, because the most important thing we can do is to move forward, whatever that may be.
I appreciate that. And I actually should have started with thank you for this. I love that we would do anything there. So, I'm grateful. But just so if you choose the retail, the market is right, the investor, that effectively precludes the housing, though anything is possible in the long run, but it does effectively do that. Okay.
In our opinion, at this particular moment, yes.
Okay.
But that's not to say that it's impossible to do something else. But based on our current plans and based on these ideas, it's residential or adaptive reuse. Just to get into sort of that hybrid, I can't give them a plan and I can't get a site plan approved for that. So let's go with the 2 options, one of which we know and one of which I was in the process to ask for, from the beginning. And that's kind of where we're at.
Nope. I appreciate the complexity and I appreciate your agility and flexibility in it. So thanks.
You're welcome.
Can I ask about one option 3?
Sure.
Just to build on the comments of my colleagues. So you have an option that looks at the phase 1, which is housing. If, for example, if you need to do retail first, and couldn't you put that phase 2 to be housing in the future, that column in the future?
I mean,
isn't that a possibility?
Of course, it's a possibility, but we'd have to entitle it slightly differently at that moment, right? You wouldn't know exactly what that would look like. Is it possible? Certainly it's possible, right? We're largely reusing. I'd have to look at where we cut off the footprint, but it's possible to do the retail and then add that second phase. But first off, our site plan is really about the first phase 5-story stick-built piece.
Right.
So any second phase site plan would actually probably really need to create a new set of drawings around that option, which at that particular moment, to my mind, you would basically come forward exactly as we're doing now, modify your project plan and your site plan for an entirely different vertical tower when and if that was the option. Right, so you do kind of what we're doing in reverse, but you'd say, okay, great, I've done the retail, and now I'd like to add this little piece over here. I want to modify my project plan again, and I want a new site plan all at the same time. That's the way I would, under your current zoning and code and the way you entitle things, that would be the way I would do it.
Just out of curiosity, is there any option to improve our processes that that could be easier to do?
Well,
Maybe that's another discussion.
you know, I went to school in Texas. There is no zoning. So, you know, that's really your option. And that doesn't truly exist in this region to basically eliminate formal zoning. But that's, and, you know, being flexible is the first step. But that's a level of flexibility that candidly, I don't think you all are prepared to give up.
Thank you.
You're
Does
right.
staff have any comments on this option 3 of, is there a possibility to have that approved with this option 1 and 2?
At this time, so as Bob mentioned, the project plan is coming in to allow for an expanded variety of uses, and this level 2 site plan more pertaining to the phase 1. So it would really just depend on the intensity of that phase 2 with the tower coming in. If it were to be a mixed use, whether it'd be evaluated just as a site plan and would go straight to planning commission or as a project plan.
Thank you. I just would appreciate if staff can see a way forward to have the optionality approval for an option 3 that we would eventually get housing if they have to go to retail first.
Sure.
Mr. Mihalik, is there anything else you want to add here? Okay. Councilmember Shaw.
Comment. Yeah, I want to echo my colleagues and thank you for your presentation. I will share that living in that community, there are a number of residents that are interested in retail and more retail in their community. So I think either choice is a win, and I appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a few quick questions. I know this may take time, and there's a lot of uncertainty with financing and tariffs, et cetera. Even if it does take time, are you committed to working with the city to maintain the safety of the pedestrian access point, the promenade? I know before you helped us get some lighting fixed there, but I just want to make sure as things take time that we're thinking about our current
100%.
residents and the safety.
Absolutely. I mean, we weren't even aware that the lights were out. We bought a building without an instruction manual. Okay, it didn't come with a building engineer. It came with nothing. So, I mean, figuring out where things were, you know, we've had some issues fairly recently, and we've been working with your permitting team and the fire marshal to resolve a bunch of issues in the building, and we appreciate that. It's a learning challenge to come forward with a building that really has been occupied in 3 years and doesn't have, like I said, anything to tell you about how to work it. So it took us a little while to figure it out. You know, we've got a valve that goes to the executive office building in our building, and we have the elevator controls, the power for the elevator that goes off the promenade. All of this is kind of just intermingled, and most of it's been eliminated, but some of it's still there. So it's the old mall. It's got tentacles, and it reaches deep into, you know, other parts of this city. So it's an interesting building to own, as your own teams of fire department people who used to work in this building would tell you. It's a challenge.
Well, we appreciate your willingness to meet the challenge. The other question I had that relates to, as this takes time, how do we, you know, at least make it the best we can for residents and people who are visiting now? You have in the past been offering in the building for parking. Do you plan to continue that? I mean, it may bring revenue to you in the process, but also supports the public.
Sure. The first level of that garage is currently public parking. It is pay by phone. You can go in there anytime. We have used the lower 2 levels to park one of the local car dealerships. It is our intention to sort of continue operating that garage until it becomes an active construction site. So we will obviously continue to work with you on that. I would tell you anecdotally, the fact I think we're a little overparked in the city of Rockville. I know that you all have plans to reduce or go towards parking minimums. I don't think those are a bad thing, because I do think you have enough parking. I think the big challenge is going to be ensuring the fact that when buildings get built, that they have the requisite amount of parking to make them financeable and bankable at the end of the day. I think generally speaking, you've got that now, but that doesn't require the old school thinking that everyone's driving.
Thank you. We had a long conversation about that in Rockville Town Center Master Plan, so we came to some resolution. The last question I have for you, and then I have one for staff. I think you mentioned potentially screening just to make it visually appealing. I know that this is, whether you know it or not, or we know it, but it is a gateway, and so people come to Rockville Town Center, they see a block now, and so if there is any opportunity to put art or screening or something, I would completely support that. It would help beautify our community and help be an entree into the Rockville Town Center.
I don't think we disagree. We're big believers in public art. I'm a part-time artist myself, so we do like that. We like the fact that it would make it more interesting and more appealing for people. So yes, we will continue to work with you on that and try to make this as the best that we possibly can for the city.
Thank you. The last question I have for staff, and if you have feedback on streamlining and things that you want to share, I know staff is going through a process now, please share with the city. For staff, this project is going to require county wanting to do BRT, which we support, the stormwater from state and county. So is the city going to continue or will be an intermediary so it's not like going in 3 different directions?
Yep, that's exactly what we plan to do, Mayor. Our goal is to get with the county, the state, city, and the developer in the same room and try to work out these issues collectively in a way that has benefits for all parties.
Thank you. And I know early on there was a little bit of not people just asking for things separately, and so I appreciate the efforts to streamline and make it one-stop shop. Okay.
Dr. Miles may have raised his hand.
Dr. Miles.
There. Sorry, I look right at him so I can kind of see that he's.
Thank you. Sorry about the last minute question. Just to echo some things my colleagues said, I was getting in the weeds about sort of student generation numbers, but more broadly appreciate the flexibility in going between the retail or possible housing use. I mean, my personal preference would be like something large to attract folks off the pike. That would be not only good for you, but also for Town Center more broadly. So certainly support the flexibility that you have outlined. That's all.
Thank you. And for those listening, there is a section on student generation. There is a good number of space at Bell Elementary and Julius West, and with Crown will be space at Richard Montgomery. I know Crown is a big part of that. So thank you very much to staff. Thank you to you, and good luck on the process. Keep us posted.
Very much. You'll see me again in a couple months.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Excellent. So we're now moving on to the section of our agenda focused on budget. We worked very hard over the past several months with staff to put together a budget. We did balancing, we did public hearings and forum, and now this is the culmination of all that work. By law, we have to approve a budget in the month of May, and so we are here to do that. I want to thank the entire city team who worked on the budget. I know it's many departments who pulled this together under leadership of Mr. Mihalik, as well as our esteemed finance team who keep us in AAA bond rating status. So thank you for that. Welcome, Ms. Kim Francisco and Stacy Webster.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. In accordance with the city charter, the mayor and council must adopt the budget at the fund level. The ordinance on attachment 1 sets the FY 2026 property tax rates, operating budget, and capital budget for each fund. The tax rates and budget figures presented in the ordinance are reflective of the mayor and council's direction throughout the budget process. All property tax rates remain the same as in FY 2025. The total operating budget of $175.5 million increased by $7.1 million or 4.2% from the FY 2025 adopted budget. The total FY 2026 CIP budget of $120.7 million increased by $1.2 million or 1.1% from the adopted FY 2025 budget. The CIP budget generally fluctuates from year to year depending on the number and type of projects that are funded. Tonight, we ask that the mayor and council adopt the budget ordinance through the following actions. First, a motion to amend the ordinance as shown in attachment 1, seconded and passed, and then proceed to adopting the amended ordinance. The budget functions as a policy document, a financial plan, an operations guide, and a communications device. The FY 2026 adopted budget provides resources that ensure the continued provision of essential municipal services and includes key enhancements that will advance the strategic initiatives of the mayor and council in their established focus areas of public safety, economic development, and housing. This agenda item includes all pieces of public testimony received during the budget process, along with the final budget priorities survey report and the final mayor and council Q&A document. I'd like to thank you, Madam Mayor and council members, for your diligence and hard work throughout this process. Given the economic uncertainties facing jurisdictions throughout the region, strategic resource allocations are critical, and this budget includes general fund additions to reserves of more than $1.1 million. That is budgeted revenues exceeding budgeted expenditures. This offers operating capacity that will be an added cushion for the city if we begin to see any reductions in revenues, and will serve as a resource to address emerging community needs, the potential for higher costs for equipment and supplies, and other forthcoming initiatives that are under the mayor and council's consideration. As we look ahead to fiscal year 2026, staff will continue to update the mayor and council on financial performance, along with any revenue or expenditure adjustments that may be required. We thank you again for your leadership, and I'd also like to thank the city manager and the budget team for their efforts over the course of this budget process. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I just wanted to note, as we adopt the ordinance to appropriate funds and levy taxes for fiscal year 26, that we are not increasing taxes. It is remaining flat, and we have not raised taxes in the city of Rockville for more than 20 years. So I just wanted to at least acknowledge that so people, when they see the title or hear us talking, are aware. Thank you. I also just wanted to thank you again. I did have one quick question. As I was looking through the document, I was trying to figure out where we have the federal workers program in here outlined.
We discussed that as a placeholder, and so you will see that item come to you on June 2nd as part of the final budget amendment for fiscal year 2025.
Okay, so you're going to do it through budget amendment after we have the work session?
Correct.
Okay, that's fair. Councilmember Van Grack.
Just one note. I know I brought it up last year, but I'll just make a note because we've talked about it during this budget session. I presume even though it's not part of this budget document, we're going to be doing assessment of the police department salaries together with what other jurisdictions are putting forward in their budget, just to make sure that we're still in competitive salaries.
We will be doing that after July 1st when we can look at all the other cities' budgets.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I know you committed to that, and thank you for restating. Councilmember Jackson, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, there was a note here on Talbot on page 94, Talbot Street. Just want to make sure, Talbot Park. I know we talked about accelerating that given the LBI money. I just wanted to at least put that on the record again.
The accelerated funding for the Talbot Street Park is included in the budget ordinance, and that funding is there as appropriated.
I saw it there, but it didn't necessarily say accelerated, so from the additional time. And when we get the budget book, there'll be some adjustments to the KPIs we discussed as well.
That's correct.
Thank you. All right. Colleagues, we have the budget before us. Anyone want to move forward? Councilman Van Grack.
Madam Mayor, I move to amend the budget ordinance as modified in Attachment 1 to appropriate funds and levy taxes for the fiscal year 2026.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilmember Larry seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Wonderful. Thank you. Now we need to move to adopt. Councilmember Fulton, would you like to help?
Sure. I move to adopt the amended budget ordinance to appropriate funds and levy taxes for fiscal year 2026.
Do we have a second? Councilmember Jackson seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Excellent. Thank you. Clap. I thank you very much. We have a budget. Just a quick note, we know that there's a lot of uncertainty, and so if there are any changes on the county, state, or federal level that we need to revisit, I know we have budget amendment opportunities, but please keep us posted as that evolves. Councilmember Fulton.
I'm going to take the opportunity because it's appropriate to do it right now, and I should have done it earlier. It's Public Service Recognition Week this week. Public servants are going through it right now, and we've got some great ones here, particularly the ones that helped pass this budget. So thanks to you guys, and thanks for everybody that works at the city for Public Service Recognition Week.
Thank you very much.
Can we second that?
We all agree. Colleagues, we have another work session. Would you like to take a break?
Yes, please.
Okay. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Let's do 5 minutes. Welcome back, Rockville. Today is still May 5th, 2025. We are reconvening meeting 12-25, and we're beginning to talk about our last work session item, which is zoning ordinance rewrite, new zones including town center, revisions to existing zone standards, height transitions, and the comprehensive map amendment. I'd like to welcome Holly Simmons as well as Jim Wasilek. I know you have a team of folks who've been helping you who may speak as well. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. For the record, I'm Holly Simmons, Deputy Zoning Manager with Community Planning and Development Services.
Can I ask that you get a little closer to the mic or pull it?
Is that
to
better?
That's better. You can pull it towards you. Perfect.
Yeah, let's
Thank you.
do that. All right. So we're here before you this evening to have the third work session on the zoning ordinance rewrite and the comprehensive map amendment. Before we dive into things, we do want to go over the presentation outline. So we'll be starting with an overview of the project timeline, where we've been, where we're going, a review of the previous work session on January 27th. We will dig into new zones, specifically focusing on town center and our high-density residential zone that is proposed. Then we'll transition to building height transitions to residential zones from higher intensity zones, revisions to existing zone standards, and we will wrap up with a follow-up from that January 27th work session, a bit of information on the comprehensive map amendment that was requested by you all at that work session. So to go over the project timeline, as you'll recall, we kicked off this project back in fall of 2023. We've gone through a number of phases since then. We've had the 2 work sessions that I referenced earlier. We began drafting our current phase in January, and now we are at our 3rd work session. So we'll have 2 more work sessions, one in July and one in September, before we do a public release of the ordinance in December, tracking toward adoption in spring of 2026. At our previous work session, we dug into the comprehensive map amendment and all of the proposed rezonings that are addressed in the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2021. If you'll recall, we received general support for most of the areas that were identified during that work session, with a need for a bit of follow-up, some more information, additional outreach, etc. So now we'll be focusing in on those topics that I went over. And when we talk about the new zones, we really are focusing in town center here. Are you able to see my cursor? Seems like maybe not.
I'm assuming you're talking about the circled spaces?
Yes, the circled spaces. I'm gonna see if I can think through really quickly how to get that cursor, because that will be important later in the work session. Let me see if I can turn it into a laser pointer. There we go. All right.
You did it. Thank you.
So first we're going to focus in on the new zones, and I did want to note that the way that we're going to approach this work session is very similar to how you all did the town center master plan work sessions, where you chunked up different topics, you go through the topic and have the questions at the end before moving on to the next topic. So we have those 5 things that we're really going to dig into. Within this new zone section, we will be looking at the town center master plan zones and ending with some questions, and then going into the residential high density zone and ending with some questions before moving on to the next big topic. So starting out with new zones, for town center, we are proposing what we're calling a family of mixed-use transit district zones. So you'll recall that you all adopted the town center master plan back in January. We followed that with a zoning text amendment to implement floating zones in the interim between the adoption of the town center master plan and the adoption of the zoning map amendment. that allows the development pursuant to the town center master plan's recommendations, but we are looking for a more permanent solution, rezoning those areas in town center through the comprehensive map amendment. So we've identified the mixed-use transit district as the most walkable transit-oriented zone, so we thought that this would be appropriate to adopt the use and development standards for the entirety of town center, but have 3 different zones that would vary based on height, and those would correspond to the heights identified for the 3 character areas in the town center master plan. So you can see those here. On the left side of this table, you see each of the character areas, the edge character area in orange, core character area in pink, and the Maryland 355 corridor character area in yellow, with their proposed zones next to them, MXTD 85, 200, and 235 respectively. Those numbers correspond to the base heights that were recommended in the town center master plan for each of those character areas. And you can see the bonus heights as well. Those also would be implemented through this zoning. At the same time, outside of town center, we are proposing to implement that MXTD 235, which has that 235-foot base height, at areas within Twinbrook and Shady Grove that are currently zoned MXTD. So this would effectively raise that base height from 120 feet with a 30-foot bonus to 235 feet with a 100-foot bonus. This would be consistent with that zone in town center, and it also would allow for that 100-foot increase to apply not only to affordable housing, but also to champion projects. So we thought that this would help to make these areas continue to be competitive with the town center, as well as other areas that are transit-oriented outside of the city in the larger county. We also think that this is supported by the comprehensive plan and the climate action plan, which direct the densest development toward transit-oriented areas within the city. So to finish up on this section, we have 2 questions related to the family of mixed-use transit districts. The first is a family of MXTD zones varied by height appropriate for town center? So really focusing on those zones within town center. And the second is, should the MXTD 235, that highest height zone, be applied to the MXTD properties at Twinbrook and Shady Grove?
Thank you very much. I just want to start off before we go into these questions to say thank you for the work on this. I know that we've had a number of sessions and this is very detailed work on your behalf with lots of maps and community outreach. So I wanted to really appreciate the deep efforts of staff on that. Before we get deeply into other items in the questions, I did want to make some comments that, one, we are talking about the zoning ordinance rewrite of Rockville Town Center. However, if anyone is listening, we did do a floating map so that if someone wants to move forward with what we approved in the Rockville Town Center Master Plan, that is possible now. We still, in terms of our rules and procedures, have to go through the process of officially analyzing and creating these zones. But I just wanted to say, if anyone is watching, you can still move forward with Rockville Town Center Master Plan activities as long as it's in alignment with the Rockville Town Center Master Plan. In addition, the comprehensive plan, there's a floating zone there as well. And so while we're building, you can still move forward on those projects. So I wanted to clarify in case anyone is questioning or has concerns about that. I also just wanted to note that in most cases, we've given property owners additional opportunities to do things with their property. And you can see we've created these 3 different transition zones within Rockville Town Center. In some cases, there are recommendations to downzone or remove uses. And so I think this body will talk through those. One of the concerns that I will just share up front, and I spoke to Mr. Mihalik about this several weeks ago, is that there is a historically black church that is within Rockville Town Center. We've heard from some of the folks at Jerusalem, and they Jerusalem Mount Pleasant, I'll say the full name, United Methodist Church. However, we're proposing to, or staff has given the option to downzone their property. And I just wanted to note, and I've shared this before, the state law has really looked at how do we help faith-based institutions do more with the land that they have? How do we allow them to contribute to solutions for affordable housing? And so I think this is not aligning with the intent of what we've seen in some of state law. I also think to remove property rights from a church that has seen a lot of historical challenges with how they've been treated, I think is just not the right thing to do. So I wanted to open up and say that what it would mean potentially is that we would not move forward with rezoning that property and keep it as is. So I wanted to at least cover that and take that off the table. Does anyone have any? Do folks support this? Councilmember Valeri.
I absolutely support this, and I think it is a good way to not only support expanding housing options, but also a good way to honor where the church has been and to correct historical wrongs to the extent that we can.
Thank you. And we'll go back to the questions, but I just want to clear this up. Councilmember Fulton.
Absolutely, I agree with everything the mayor said. We shouldn't be taking away uses from the church or any other property in the city. But I want to clarify, yes, it's staff's proposal, but it's staff's proposal because it is clearly required, it's recommended in the comprehensive plan that was passed. So I agree we shouldn't enact it, but it didn't come out of nowhere. It was in the comp plan. But I agree we shouldn't be downzoning the church or any other property.
Councilmember Van Grack.
So I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I think this is definitely something that we shouldn't be doing, but I don't want to necessarily just talk about this property here, because what we're talking about here, and I understand it's a staff recommendation with regard to downzoning numerous properties throughout the area surrounding town center and including town center. There's a number of properties. So the church is absolutely right, and I agree with everything the mayor's saying, but I don't want to lose sight of some of these other properties that are also being downzoned to residential and office where they have use as well. So I think this is something, I know I've spoken about it before, I know others of the body has as well. I understand things might be part of the comp plan, but the idea of taking away people's rights that have significant use of the property when they purchased it and they've been using it for many times decades is not something that we as a body should be doing. And so not only do I support what the mayor is saying here with regard to this property, but I actually believe that should be applying throughout what we're doing in this, the zoning ordinance rewrite.
Yeah, and then to clarify, that is the comment I made about removing uses, and that was particularly, I think, the MXT to MXRO.
RO is exactly right. And so I just wanted to say 100% with regard to use, but I think I want to look out for those people who also aren't here and testify, because this is an important aspect of property use that I don't want to take away from folks, let alone the church, which I think shouldn't have it taken away as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson, then Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. So I don't want to belabor the point. I agree with my colleagues and with you, Mayor. So count me as agreeing with you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shaw?
I strongly agree with my colleagues, and I think this move will also look to reconcile some issues, historical issues. And on that note, I think we also need to look at expanding our equity lens when we're zoning in general, as well as applying a displacement lens for residents as well.
Thank you. Dr. Miles?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a general rule, I support anything that increases density, particularly with regard to housing in places that make sense. That said, I'm on board with you all. No significant deviation between how I feel and what you all have articulated thus far. That's all.
Thank you. All right, so now we'll move on to your questions. So is a family of MXT zones varied by height appropriate for town center, which I think most of us have sort of already weighed in with the Rockville Town Center master plan. But I'll just say, can we do a thumbs up?
On the first one?
On the first one. Okay. Yep. You're good there. Should MXTD 235 be applied to MXTD properties at Tornbrook and Shady Grove? Thumbs up. Okay. All right. Can I just throw in one comment here? So we're talking about Twin Brook and Shady Grove. There are other shopping centers, and I know I've talked to staff about this, that maybe someone wants to do something with and put a mixture of mixed use and housing. I'm thinking about Veers Mill and other places. This does not do anything for them. Is staff thinking about those as well?
Actually, on that.
Councilmember Valeri.
Thank you. On that point, we are really using the term transit and metro transit kind of interchangeably, because if we were expanding it to an actual just transit district, we might be including some of the high use corridors like Veers Mill, which hopefully sooner rather than later we'll get the BRT as well. And each of those stations could have the possibility of having more opportunities as it's greater utilization. So yeah, I wouldn't want us to get kind of away from looking at transit as not just metro, but that we have other good things coming on the horizon that I think would be applicable. We do know where some of the stops are going to be on Beers Mill as of 9 o'clock tonight. But we could at least, plan for that sort of flexibility to really use it as a way to revitalize some of that corridor as well.
What is the height allowance at the neighborhood shopping centers? I wouldn't say neighborhood really, because there's some parts that are very commercial, but can you just give us a general understanding of that?
Sure, Madam Mayor, happy to. The Twin Brook Shopping Center at Veers Mill Road and Atlantic Avenue is in the MXNC zone. And that's not recommended to change in the comprehensive plan. That allows up to 45 feet in height. That is also, as we know, one of the proposed station sites at Atlantic and Veers Mill. I will say that the comp plan actually does recommend upzoning where the station sites are proposed in the BRT along Veers Mill. So there's one at Edmonston Drive that's recommended, and there's another one at Twin Brook Parkway. So our comp plan has recommended that upzoning occur to the MXNC zone. Granted, that's not nearly as tall as the MXTD family, but it does recognize that the Veers Mill BRT is coming.
So even with approval with the zoning ordinance, you're right, those stations near transit where you have those shopping centers would still be 45 feet.
Yes.
Okay, well, I've shared my feedback. I don't know if anyone has any comments on this. I just wanted to see if anyone wants to weigh in. Do you want staff to look at this option, and could we, given the comprehensive plan? Yeah. I'm seeing some thumbs up.
Yeah, support.
Okay, yes, yes. Dr. Mile, okay, it looks like a unanimous yes. I know we won't solve this tonight, but at least you can come back to us. Okay, so we're answered those questions. Thank you.
All right. So moving on to the new zone that focuses on residential high density. This is something that also is recommended in the comprehensive plan, and you've seen reference to this before at that January 27th work session. This is proposed to be applied down in Planning Area 10 in the areas where there are the Rollins Park and Congressional Towers communities currently. So we have more specifics at this point in time. We are proposing that there would be a density in this high-density residential zone of 50 dwelling units per acre. That's roughly between the densities of Gaithersburg's and Montgomery County's highest residential-only zones. We're also proposing a maximum height of 75 feet, which is consistent with the RMD 25 zone, which occupies most but not all of that property. And then we're also, particularly in response to concerns from community members whom we've talked to back in December and then again just last week, we're proposing there be a transition area where within 100 feet of the property line when confronting or abutting, so either next to or across the street from single unit residential, the height is limited to 45 feet, which is generally consistent with what is there currently, maybe actually even a little bit less than what the RMD 25 would allow in that area. So you can see here where those heights would apply. The blue area down along Rollins Avenue and up on Martha Terrace, those are proposed to be those 45-foot heights. And you can see an example image of what that would look like outlined in blue here. So kind of 4-story. And then in the purple area, all the rest of this site except for the 200-foot width along East Jefferson Street, which is proposed to be MXCT. All of the purple area would be 75 feet. And you can see that in the purple right here. Both of these images are taken from the area in and around the proposed rezoning. And the purple is actually an image of Congressional Towers. So that will give you an idea of what that really would look like. We do understand from speaking with the community members that they have strong concerns related to this portion of the property right here, which is currently zoned R75. That's the only portion of the focus area that is not RMD 25. It's currently occupied by the private clubhouse and pool for the community. So I think they have serious concerns about increasing the height there, increasing residential units generally, and just seeing that property specifically change. So our question for this topic is, are the density and height transitions recommended for the residential high density zone appropriate?
Can I ask a question just in terms of the Martha's Terrace, just to be able to ask some questions with you? Can you show that map of Martha's Terrace? I know I've been back there. It's a little tighter. Do we have the infrastructure? Would staff suggest doing anything in terms of the road to accommodate additional density and make it safe?
Mayor, we'd have to dig into it and really determine what type of redevelopment would be there, and then figure out the traffic generation. And if that suggests that the road would need to be improved or modified, we'd certainly do that. But it's too early right now to determine what we would want to do to the road without knowing the traffic volume.
Thank you. Councilman Van Grack and then Councilman Jackson.
So along the lines, I mean, all we're doing here is talking about the zoning, because any particular project that we would necessarily approve, we could address any either infrastructure needs or any other issue as needed. All we're doing now is saying what could be done without addressing any particular project. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Councilman Jackson?
No, I had
Similar comment. Councilman Valeri?
Not a similar comment. So, and I appreciate making that point. I think it's always important, and I think that that was the whole point of the comprehensive master plan sessions as well. It is not what is going to come before mayor and council tomorrow, but it's the kind of Rockville that we want for the future. I think that a lot of the concerns that we heard and hear from the community in and around Montrose are existing issues that they feel with the current infrastructure. So I don't even think, you know, and I appreciate, like, you know, digging in on what might be coming in that one corner, but to the extent that we can address some of the current challenges that they're facing, I think that would probably be a little bit more helpful in the moment, because we've definitely addressed, you know, the enforcement struggles of getting people to comply with stop signs, go figure. But if there are things that we can do for their traffic, for their road structure, that could ease some of these concerns now, I think would be really, really helpful. That was my first main point, but a quick secondary question. Is the community center and the pool that they are concerned about in that corner, is that private to the community? Is that attached to a particular development?
I think our understanding is that it is associated with the development at Congressional Towers in Rollins Park, but it does seem that the community in the single-family dwellings also has access to it, and they value it.
Okay, that makes sense. I was just trying to get a sense of it was. I didn't think it was a public pool, but yeah, no, I think if there are existing challenges on Rollins, which we know that there are some, and already existing challenges on Martha's Terrace, then we should look at those now. But I don't think that should preclude what could come into this area 20 years from now.
Thank you. Councilman Rashad, I see your hand. Do you have any comments about this area?
I'm still thinking through it, but I would like to see more information around traffic.
Mr. Mihalik.
Yep. A little off topic, Mayor, but just to address what Councilmember Valeri and Shaw just mentioned, we've been out in the community, and the residents acknowledged it today quite a bit with additional traffic enforcement, education, writing a lot of tickets, et cetera. Had some community neighborhood sessions to talk about some ideas preliminarily. But I want everybody to know that we've also put in for Council of Governments study to do a neighborhood-wide traffic study. We're optimistic we're going to get that. And even if we don't, we're going to continue to look for improvements to do traffic calming in and around the neighborhood, even without development, to Councilmember Valeri's point, to Councilmember Shaw's point. So we're out there outside of the zoning, doing what we can to address traffic in the neighborhood right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it's worth mentioning that at all the projects, especially the areas that they're seeing potential trouble, that you would be looking at traffic and infrastructure and what improvements are needed.
That's correct.
So colleagues, we have a question before us. Can you put up the question again? Are the density and height transitions recommended for the RHD appropriate? Thumbs up. Are you good? Councilmember Shaw? Okay, so you're watching for more information. So we need to give direction. Are you good with where we are? Okay. All right, so thank you very much. I'll just note I do want to make sure that we're looking at the traffic and infrastructure to support the comments of the community.
So next up are height transitions. First, we're going to go through and kind of look at what we're dealing with currently, kind of problem identification. And I'll go through that a little bit slowly. It can be a little bit difficult to understand what's happening here, which is part of the reason that we are proposing to change this. But we'll go through what we're dealing with currently and then transition into our proposal for the zoning ordinance rewrite. So currently within the zoning ordinance, we have a number of provisions that aim to provide transitions from lower intensity uses, single family detached houses, townhouses, et cetera, to higher intensity uses. So one of the most well-known perhaps in the city of Rockville is the layback slope. So this is shown before you in this image, which we pulled from the zoning ordinance. You could go and look it up yourself if you wanted to spend some time with it. But what you're seeing here on the right-hand side of this image is a small box that's designating a single unit detached, semi-detached, or attached or townhouse. And then you have a property line running kind of right down the middle of the picture, and it's showing you that from that property line of a single unit detached, semi-detached, attached, or townhouse dwelling, you have a line that rises from that property line at a 30-degree angle, and buildings on that adjacent property or confronting property, whether it's right next door or it's across the street, they are not allowed to be built taller than that 30-degree line. So that applies specifically in our mixed-use, industrial, and in some cases the RMD 25 zone, but it does not apply to the MXT or the MXC because those zones, their height is a little bit lower than this. So to illustrate the issue, we did a case study looking at 400 North Washington Street. To give you a little bit of background on this property, we're looking at Martins Lane along the northern border, North Washington Street along the east, North Street along the south, and then on the western border, we have townhouses within the RMD 10 residential medium density 10 zone. So because they are next door to that RMD 10 zone, a layback slope is applied to the property going from the west to the east. The width of the property is 200 feet, and currently its zone is MXNC, or Mixed Use Neighborhood Commercial, and it's proposed to be within that MXTD Mixed Use Transit District 85. The allowable height currently is 45 to 65 feet in that MXNC zone, and it's proposed to be 85 with a 135-foot bonus. And we note at a baseline that as currently applied, that layback slope would prevent development in accordance with the Town Center Master Plan's recommendations. So to show that a little bit more clearly, you can see that same property up here at the top. We've got the direction of the layback slope, that yellow line going from west to east. And along that line, we've drawn points that correspond to this table down here. So I'm going to go through this kind of step by step. On the left-hand side, we have the distance from the abutting property line. So the first arrow you see is at 78 feet, right here. And with the layback slope, the allowable height would be 45 feet. That's the first time in this property that you're even getting to what is currently the base height with that MXNC. Prior to that, for the first 78 feet into that property, you're inhibited by that layback slope below 45 feet. And if you're trying to imagine this in stories, how tall would this be? It's about 4 stories. So the next point at 147 feet into the property, that's where you're getting to your proposed base height of 85 feet. So for the whole way up into from that western property line to 147 feet into the property, you're not able to achieve the base height that is proposed with the MXTD 85. And only for the very last portion of the property, it's about a little over a quarter of the property, are you able to achieve anything above 85 feet. However, at no point on this particular property with the layback slope applied would you be able to max out that bonus height that would get you to 135 feet.
Thank you. Can I ask you, are any colleagues interested in this current proposal, or should we go to staff's fix for this? I think, okay, can we go to your fix?
Move on?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what we've proposed to solve for this problem is a more modern height transition that would balance the need to have appropriate transitions from lower intensity uses to higher intensity uses, but also respond to the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, the Town Center Master Plan, the Climate Action Plan, et cetera, and really move the city more toward the mayor and council's housing production goals as well. So with this proposal, any buildings of 50 feet or greater would need to step back 10 feet from the facade of the building after the second story. So if you have a building that's up to 50 feet, this doesn't apply. But as soon as your building hits 50 feet or it gets higher than that, you have to start looking back at that second story, and you go back 10 feet from that outermost facade of the along the property line that abuts or confronts single unit residential in a residential zone, or a couple other instances as well. And then for those buildings that are above 50 feet, they also were proposing would need to step back an additional 10 feet at 85 feet or above. So if they're wanting to make use of that bonus height, then they would have another step back as well. So 10 feet after the second story, 10 feet after 85 feet, but it doesn't apply at all if the building is less than 50 feet. We're proposing that the height transitions would apply to all of the MX zones except for the MXT and the MXC, because again, their heights are rather constrained already. It would also, It would also apply to the RMD residential medium density 25, and then our heavy industrial and light industrial zones as well. And it would apply when those properties in this column are either abutting or confronting properties developed with single unit, duplex, or townhouse dwellings in any of these zones listed over on the right-hand side. So those are all of our residential single unit and residential medium density zones except for RMD 25.
Can I ask one clarification to an earlier comment on MXNC? I was looking at the paper. It actually says max base height of 45 moving to 65. So just to clarify, I think we said 45 before, but 65 is possible?
It's 45 by right, but there is a bonus of up to 65 feet total that is permitted based on the provision of public use space over what would typically be allowed.
Okay.
That's how it's currently written. So this last slide before we get to the questions for mayor and council really applies to an alternate proposal to staff's proposal. So you can see here on the left-hand side an example of how this would apply in town center. So you can see all of planning area 1 in yellow, and then properties where this step back provision would apply on any portion of the property are shown in pink. And then the specific facades where they would apply are shown in red in these areas. But we understand that mayor and council may also be interested in seeing a transition from MXT or the proposed MXRO. So we wanted to show that option as well, although this is not staff's proposal. So again, same symbology to show the town center properties, the properties to which the step back would apply, and then the frontage with the step backs if it were to apply from the MXT or the proposed MXRO. So you can see there's quite a bit of an expansion there. However, we don't recommend this simply because those properties have existed as they are, as generally commercial, mixed use, some small amount of residential, and have served as kind of a built-in transition themselves for a number of years. So our first question is, are the height transitions that we propose appropriate? And should a height transition apply from the MXT or MXRO zone?
Thank you. Can we go back to the previous map? Is there anyone interested on the map on the right? I'm just looking. Okay. I think you have your answer. Councilman Van Grack.
Well, I just want to clarify that I'm definitely not interested on the map on the right. I actually have a concern with the height transition zones overall. I think if we're truly going to be committed to actually the residential density, and this whole mayor and council really had a very significant goal to what we're talking about in the units in town center. And even with the red lines that exist and potential, future adjustments, every unit could make a difference. And even with the height transition zones, and I completely understand staff, I appreciate the detail that the staff went through here is fantastic. What you guys have really went through with what we've done in the past, alternative, which is absolutely better than what we've had in the past. My concern is if we're truly going to be utilizing every available residential density unit that we can, the height transition zones are concerning. And I also would say if we're going to have them, I would only apply them to the residential zones, not the residential medium density. I think that is a density that if we're going to apply it at all, it should only apply to residential, even though overall, I don't think it should be applying at all because I think we'd be restricting the ability for us to have residential density. That being said, the detail of what the staff put together here was absolutely fantastic. And I give the staff a lot of credit for the detail and the preciseness of all the information they provided.
Thank you. Councilman Valeri.
Okay, first I'll say ditto on this is extremely helpful, and I love maps. I love data, but I really love maps, and this is actually really helpful. As a slight, not really a counterpoint to my colleagues' comments just now, we could get more units if we expanded and rezoned more equitably across the city. Right now, the majority of the rezoning is occurring on the east side of the city or through the 355 corridor. So, maybe we should do a straw poll on that. I am always struck in these conversations, generally and then broadly, that we are trying to just consistently, and I'm all for density, do not get me wrong, but we're trying to accomplish every single one of our housing goals in just these little areas and not having what I think is a more difficult conversation, which is how do we get increased density across more parts of the city where frankly there are more open space. So I just want to throw that out there. That's just Marissa's minute. But I just think like, because I hear what you're saying, I totally hear what you're saying. But I think in order to do that, I think we have to look at the city as a community and not as east and west.
Agreed. And I also note that we just talked about coming back to us with some of the neighborhood shopping centers as well, because those are all over the city. So that would be helpful.
That would be helpful. Absolutely.
Dr. Miles?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support staff's recommendation on this one.
Thank you. Go down. Councilmember Shaw?
I also support staff's recommendation.
Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. I support staff's recommendation.
Councilmember Fulton?
I would apply any height transitions only to the residential, only the much narrower set of properties.
Just so we can clarify, can you note which ones would be the only residential, how that would change the map? Just for consideration. I know there's majority potential for, so I just want to check.
Yeah.
I think the red line on the southern border of Richard Montgomery High School would continue. Those are still single-family homes adjacent.
So I guess, is this any different? Was what was mentioned by our colleagues any different than what your staff is already proposing?
Yeah, at the northernmost red segment, there's townhouses that are abutting the one property, so that segment of the red line would go away.
I would note also that the layback slope currently and these transition heights, if they were adopted, would apply outside of town center as well to any property that abuts.
That's true.
In this case, a residential zone, if that is the direction that Mayor and Council gives.
Councilmember Fulton.
I really appreciate that clarification because I think it's going to make it is a much bigger impact than is just shown on this map, which, again, to Councilmember Valeri's point, would apply across the city and allow for greater density and more housing and units all across the city, not just here, if we only applied it to the narrower residential only, right?
Thank you. I support staff's recommendation. However, I do think it might be helpful for us to do a little road tour because it'd be helpful to see the maps on where we could get additional housing and how that would work. So I've mentioned this to Mr. Mihalik, but if we could do not that we're, get the senior bus or one of the buses and go out and see the properties and see how that would impact. Where could we get additional housing? How does it abut some residential areas so that we can see it firsthand together? I don't know. I know that some of my colleagues are open to this, but just want to see, would you be open to a trip like that? Councilmember Fulton?
Well, I'm into the road trip, but is the road trip going to mean that we're not providing the needed direction on this till we do the road trip? Otherwise, why are we doing the road trip?
Well, I think that for now, there's majority of staff's recommendation, but potential to add, pending the road trip. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. I might have spoke too quickly. So I'd support staff's recommendation, but I would not plot it to anything but residential.
Thank you. Okay. Is anyone else, would you guys be okay with the road trip? Yes? Okay.
I already got Kate in.
All right. Thank you.
All right, so moving on to our proposed revisions to existing zone standards. We do have a number of existing zones, as you know, and some of them we are proposing to change. The first thing we wanted to address before we really get into that, though, is some information on the Housing Expansion and Affordability Act. So this is state legislation that is already in effect. It went into effect on January 1st of this year. So if a project came in tomorrow and they wanted to make use of these provisions, we would accommodate them, although it's not currently reflected in our zoning ordinance. So what the Housing Expansion and Affordability Act does is establish qualified projects which, if they meet certain criteria, so these are not every project within the city, but if they meet certain criteria, they would be able to receive specific benefits. So the two types of qualified projects that would apply in the city are those that are located within 3/4 of a mile of specifically passenger rail stations, or those that are controlled by a nonprofit or located on land owned by a nonprofit. So if they qualify under the first criteria, that locational factor within 3/4 of a mile of rail transit, if they provide 20% of housing units that are deed restricted affordable for 40 years, then they would get a 30% height bonus on top of whatever the base height is for the zone that they are located within. Same story with the second option for qualifying. If it's a nonprofit and they are providing 25% of housing units that are deed restricted affordable for 40 years, then they also would get that 30% height bonus, regardless of where they're located within the city. These are slightly over what our current MPDU requirements are at 15%.
Can I ask a question about this?
Yeah,
And I will
absolutely.
say thank you for bringing this back, because I know I was trying to say, let's align with state law and make it clear. My question is, why can't we make a note about state law in our zoning, or just align it to what the state law is? And I say that because you all are fantastic, but I have seen, there could be changes in staff. Someone doesn't remember state law. We've experienced it where there's someone wants to do something, there's kind of using our original zoning, but not necessarily applying the overlay of state law. So this is the law of the land, and at least in this state, why wouldn't we just put it forward so that any applicant can see what's allowable?
Is the question, why wouldn't we just have a line in the zoning ordinance that says for any qualified projects under the Housing Expansion and Affordability Act, go look at state law, we'll apply it, basically?
Right.
I know that Nick Dumais is on the line. I might defer to him if he's available.
Councilor,
Sure,
go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Dumais, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to answer the question. So, in certain cases where state law is kind of ancillary to zoning, like it affects the way that property is to be developed, but it doesn't go to the core of what zoning does. I think references to state law generally in the code make sense. In this case, because state law really does affect some of the core aspects of the zoning of property, like height, like locational criteria, my recommendation would be to incorporate this into our code. And Ms. Simmons and I and other members of the Community Planning and Development Services have discussed ways of doing it. And we have some ideas that we'll be bringing to you later, but I don't think it's going to be overly complicated to incorporate this. It does mean that we would have to monitor state law, but we can both incorporate these provisions and include a provision elsewhere in the code that notes that to the extent state law changes, state law governs, which of course it does, but we could just acknowledge that. So I think we could accomplish kind of the best of both worlds, but for these restrictions or requirements, I would definitely recommend that we incorporate them into our code.
Thank you. That's my option one. I think that makes the most sense. It's the cleanest and clearest, and we have to monitor state law anyway. So it just makes it so that everyone can see and they don't have to know and compare to very lengthy codes. So, Councilmember Fulton.
I think you just helped me understand. I want to do the thing that makes it easiest for people. So, which means I don't think I would want, and maybe no one's recommending this, just a go see state law.
No.
I would want it so they don't have to go somewhere else. It's we actually write down the law there and
That's
say,
right.
if state law supersedes, go look there. Yes,
Yep.
I'm very much in favor of that.
Yeah, I was like, why would we? Thank you. That was Plan B if we couldn't do it. But, so is everyone okay with this? Going to straw poll? Councilmember Shaw has a question.
I just have a question. And I know that we're going to talk about our MPDUs. We're going to have a work session on that. I support, in advance of that discussion, support increasing the amount of affordable housing with our MPDUs of like 20% instead of 15. Can you talk to me a bit how this would work with that?
So what the state law says is for any jurisdictions that have a requirement over and above what they are requiring, which actually it's equal to or greater than, which we actually already meet that. What state law requires is 15% off the bat for qualified projects in that first category, but then they say if your current requirements are equal to or greater than that, which ours are, they're 15% and they're deed restricted for longer than what the state is requiring for qualified projects, then you bump up to 20%. So I don't believe that it would impact this because it says if you're over and above, you go from 15 to 20%.
Thank you. And the nice thing is it says minimum of 40 years, so we would be able to apply our MPDU laws of 99 years. Councilmember Valeri.
No, that is a good. I'm going to be on a singular theme this evening. Would it be possible, and now I understand this is a state law, I'm not trying to change the state law, but, and definitely don't want to change this one, I know, good luck, that Rockville could have, in addition to how the Housing Expansion and Affordability Act applies here, could also use the same metrics to say located within 3/4 of a mile of a BRT station. Because that's not uniform across the state, and I get it, because, there's light rail and other things, but, if we do want to encourage folks, and we do want more folks living by transit, I would love to see like a Rockville addendum that would apply this, but to within 3/4 of a mile from a BRT station.
Thank you.
So the last thing that I would mention on this slide, and it's actually not shown here, but for any single unit residential only zones, for qualified projects, you're able to develop multifamily or multiplex missing middle housing types if you're a qualified project.
And I think it's important as you go back out to the community so that people know this is state law. It's approved at the state legislature.
So before we get into information on the RMD infill, our missing middle housing zone, which is where we will focus most of this section, we did want to address two other revisions to existing standards that we are proposing. The first is a revision to the height in our light industrial zone, increasing the base height from 40 feet to 60 feet. We think that this will do a good job of supporting some of the comprehensive plan recommendations related to creating thriving industrial areas and ensuring regulations support the retention and growth of industrial uses. And it will absolutely allow more flexibility for limited and highly sought after land within our light industrial zones. We also wanted to note that we are proposing to revise our design requirements. Specifically in our mixed-use zones, there are quite a lot of design requirements that developments currently have to meet. However, they're kind of a mixture of guidelines and requirements. So they use words like must, required, permitted, and then they also use words like should. So it's a mixture of things you must do and things that are suggestions, nice to have, aren't legally enforceable. So we wanted to clean that up and really increase the clarity and the specificity and therefore the enforceability, both to clarify for applicants what's required of them and also for staff how we actually implement our design requirements. With that, creating a little bit more stringency around those design requirements that relate to things like facades, architectural treatments, etc. We're also planning to add provisions for alternative compliance. These you may be familiar with because they are part of the East Rockville design guidelines already, but they allow a little bit of flexibility for designers and architects to meet the intent of the design requirements, but maybe in a different way, adapting to their site, adapting to their style, but still ensuring a high level of quality design, either equal to or greater than what the design requirements actually stipulate. Moving into
We have a question, sorry.
Of course.
Councilman Valeri.
Can we go back to the previous slide? Can you give me an example of, you gave some great, it's very clear on the light industrial, which I would posit we do have a lot of residential by light industrial. So that is something for my colleagues to consider as well. Can you share an example of a design requirement revision that staff is proposing?
I can.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's not a problem at all. It should be on page 461 of the agenda packet. Let me just.
I think they speak to entrances, making it clear and visible from the pedestrian sidewalk is one of them, for example.
Exactly. Yeah, that is the example in here. So the current example, okay, so building design must include design elements which clearly indicate to customers where the entrances are located and which add aesthetically pleasing character to buildings by providing highly visible customer entrances. We're really trying to get rid of words like aesthetically pleasing or visual character, make it clearer what we're talking about when we mean those things. So that's proposed to be revised to the primary building entrance must be clearly defined and accessible. Primary building entrances must include design features such as canopies, awnings, or porches that enhance the pedestrian experience and offer shelter.
Okay, I appreciate that because I was really trying to wrap my head around, especially around commercial buildings, what we were really talking about. So I appreciate that clarity. Thank you.
Can I ask a question just to understand how this would apply? I'm thinking about a couple of industrial sites right now where the entrances are actually hard to find. If they were to do a modification to their building, they were just trying to, maybe expand some space or something minor, would we ask them to break the walls and put an entrance in? I just want to make sure we're thinking about allowing people to update their properties and not foregoing all updates because they can't comply.
I think most of the guidelines would kick in when there's new construction or
New
a major
construction, not
addition.
Not retroactive to properties, and also not if they're trying to do a minor adjustment to their property.
No, not at all.
Perfect, thank you. Councilmember Fulton.
I'm gonna use your phrase. I would be remiss if I didn't say that I'm generally not in favor of any design standards. And I think we should be really careful to, and I know this is the intent, but anything that's about aesthetically pleasing or assuming what somebody wants to look at, as opposed to making the building accessible and safe, I would personally want to steer very clear from.
Thank you. I do appreciate that staff is actually trying to change the language so that it's not aesthetically pleasing, but you're asking for what you want and focusing on the accessibility. I know that staff also is looking at some factors like, blocking and massing as well, I believe, is one of the topics. Councilmember Van Grack.
Yeah, and I just want to echo that because I agree there needs to be clarification, and I think in my review of the existing zoning, you guys are 100% on the mark because there's some confusing language as to whether something is mandatory or whether something is allowed to be done, and that clarity is necessary. That being said, given some of the testimony that I know that we've received from a number of communities, I would reduce the musts, especially when it comes to aesthetic or specific type of material use, because those are the big concerns that we've heard from the community. To echo what Councilmember Fulton was saying, clearly there are some of the musts with regard to access areas and not crowding, and potentially some concerns regarding keyhole properties that we clearly should have because it's good for the city and planning. That being said, to the extent we can reduce some of the musts that the community generally has come to us with concerns about, that would be some of echoing what Councilmember Fulton said.
Thank you.
All right. So getting into the residential medium density infill zone, this is what we call our missing middle housing zone. Missing because we haven't seen much of this type of development. Middle because it is development in between single unit detached up to mid-rise apartments. This zone currently allows single unit detached and other house scale dwellings, so duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and townhouses. And we're proposing to add in cottage courts, which I've shown you images of before, but we'll see them again in just a moment. And then we're also proposing to allow or to revise a few of the other development standards. This is really informed by the comprehensive plan recommendations, but also through Mayor and Council's social justice initiative. We've reviewed APA, the American Planning Association's Equity and Zoning Guide, and they encourage developing or expanding this type of zoning that does allow for a diversity of housing types. And we've also spoken with community members. We've had a focus group with affordable housing organizations. We've spoken one-on-one with a number of small builders. And all of that has gone into informing the standards that we are proposing, along with looking at some precedent research of other communities that have implemented zoning of this nature. So we're proposing the development would be allowed on lots of any size, no minimum lot size standard. Also having very limited design standards, mostly to respond to community feedback around wanting them to have interaction with the street, etc. And then we're proposing that the height for cottage courts would be 30 feet tall, duplexes and triplexes would be 35, and fourplexes would be 40, with a front setback of 15 feet, a side setback of 5 feet, but it could be reduced if there is a total of 10 feet between the two side setbacks, and then a rear setback of 5 feet. Showing some example images. These are actually taken from Louisville, Kentucky. On the bottom left, you see a duplex, what that could look like in space, 2 side-by-side attached units with parking to the rear. A fourplex up in the top middle, so 2 units side-by-side with 2 units on top of them. And then a cottage court down in the bottom right. And these images you've seen before. We have our stacked duplex up in the top left, and then going clockwise, a quadplex, a cottage court over in the upper right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner, another cottage court looking out from the porch of one of the dwellings, a fourplex, and then over in the bottom left-hand corner, a side-by-side duplex. So our question for the RMD infill is, do you continue to be supportive of the RMD infill zone as proposed?
Thank you. Councilmember Fulton.
So my answer to the question is yes. My question is, I'm sorry, and I probably missed it, and it's probably there. Where are these zones?
Not in enough area.
So there are some R&D infill properties that have already been rezoned right at the Rockville Metro Station, along Reading Terrace and Park Road, and I'm trying to think of the other street.
Stone Street as well, no?
But the comp plan recommends extending all along Veers Mill Road because of the BRT coming, and then expanding the existing RMD infill areas at the Rockville Station as well.
sorry, is the map up right now where these zones are? What?
Some of these areas, yes, this is the map of all of the proposed rezonings from the comp plan, but some of them, I was just circling. So Jim was talking about these ones right here at the Rockville Metro, and then also a portion of these, most of these with some nodes of that mixed-use neighborhood commercial that are along Veers Mill, as well as a few properties up in Lincoln Park.
So late in the game to say this, and I just offer for my colleagues, I would love at a certain point to see if we can expand that zone to more areas of the city than where it's currently listed.
Thank you. And just to comment on our potential tour, but some of the neighborhood shopping zones might, be an area where we also get at that. Councilman Van Grack.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my comment, because not only am I supportive of the RMD infill, I think there's an opportunity for us to expand it. I mean, I think every housing research talks about, especially in our area of the country, this is a missing area. And we're talking about expanding certain areas, just as Councilmember Valeri was talking about, in certain areas to a focus of a heavy, heavy residential concentration, whereas this is an area that we can increase our housing units throughout the city in a reasonable level in that missing middle. So to the extent there's an agree to expand that area, not only do I support it, I've double supportive because I think it can be increased.
Thank you. Councilmember Valeri.
So of course I support that too, because I basically said it earlier, but I think that that's really where we can be most strategic too, right? In getting our overall supply. Because I think that when, I'm sitting here looking, those, the opportunities are endless. I think that people can be extremely creative in the way that the properties appear. So I too would double, triple support it. And as this was my example of, there's a lot of zone changes happening in one part of the city, and we can do more across more. I will say, however, that I share my colleagues' concerns, and I would need to see exactly how limited those design standards would be, because I think that part of the reason that the infill works in other areas and jurisdictions is because people have had the flexibility to be creative in how their approach is. So I would be really concerned with any design standard. So I'd want to learn more about exactly how limited. But yes, I would love to see this spread out across the city.
Thank you. I was just going to note, in Massachusetts, they actually have done a nice job of not just putting block buildings. They've done a nice job of making them look like they flow into the neighborhood. And so they look like homes, and then you go in and there's 6 units there. So, and then Councilman Valeri, this goes to the point of how we're also getting at the BRT, Veers Mill area that you were talking about. That's in the Town Center Master Plan. And sorry, the comprehensive plan. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. I support staff's recommendation. I would like to study more other areas of the city. I think it's a great idea, but I think, we just need to understand the pitfalls and the opportunities to expand this to other areas of the city.
So maybe maps and part of our road show, our road tour. Councilmember Shaw.
I also agree. I had a question. This would also cover like garden style apartments as well.
As proposed, it would cover up to a 4-plex, so 4 units
Okay.
together. It would be a little bit smaller scale than a garden-style apartment.
Okay, I still support this.
Thank you. Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support this too. That's all.
So our final topic area for the night, refresh on the comprehensive map amendment. So I think we've dealt quite sufficiently with the planning area 4 recommendation that Mayor and Council wished to revisit. We can provide a bit of information here, but I think we have direction on this one.
I think we covered this already.
Excellent. So the next one we wanted to come back and provide a bit more information on was the proposed rezoning in Lincoln Park. So if you'll recall, the current zone for these properties are R60, and they're proposed to be the RMD infill. So what we're looking at here is North Stone Street along the eastern border of these properties. We did reach out to the Department of Public Works with the questions that you all raised back on January 27th regarding infrastructure. And DPW did say that they anticipate any traffic increase would be well distributed in the street grid. They think that Ashley Avenue would continue to function as designed. And they provided some information regarding right-of-way improvements that they're currently pursuing in this area, and that is included in attachment 2 to the staff report. However, we did want to note that we also had the opportunity to meet with the Lincoln Park Civic Association a second time on April 12th. And just generally, community members expressed very strong concern about these proposed rezonings. Certainly, equity considerations were raised, not for the first time in this process. And so while we've noted that the APA Equity and Zoning Guide does support establishing new districts with more flexible housing standards, it also notes, and this is actually a quote, however, if the residents of historically disadvantaged and vulnerable neighborhoods want to preserve single household zoning to discourage speculative investment and displacement, those desires should be respected. So we've committed as staff to continue meeting with the community members, but we also think that the comprehensive plan recommendation should be viewed in light of the Mayor and Council's social justice resolution and the equity-related information from the American Planning Association.
Can I also just make one other comment for context? So it's not just all single family on Stone Street. We actually rezoned the Stone Street master plan opportunity there. And so there's projects to potentially bring in apartment as well as other housing types in that community already. So there's zoning. You can't see it on this map, but it's lower on that block and close to Metro. So I just wanted to, since the comment was made about single family, I wanted to note there is some additional density that's built in on the MCPS properties, which we're hopeful to move and have a partnership with Habitat for Humanity. Councilmember Fulton.
I'm so sorry I didn't catch this. Can we go back a slide? Because I want to be crystal clear and transparent with everybody, because we did talk about this early on, but not in this context, not with this map. It's my understanding, I just want to be super sure, that the majority of this body is not in favor of making either of these changes and leaving both of those properties as MXT. That's what we discussed. Wanted to make sure we were transparent with everybody with the map.
That's what we discussed.
Thanks.
Yep. Did you want to, since you have the mic, talk about the Lincoln properties? Do you have any comments on this map?
Not right now.
Okay, all right. Anyone else have comments or questions about this map? Councilmember Van Grack.
So I just want to clarify, because I know that we've heard some concern with regard to this property from the community. Has there been the opposite reaction from the community? Like, have there been some in support of this? Is it mixed, or is it the only reactions we've heard? Because I know I've heard also some concern. Is the only reaction we've heard concern about it?
I mean, we met with the Civic Association, and that's where we heard the concerns. I don't think there was a balance at that particular meeting.
Okay.
And I think we heard from people who are not part of the Civic Association who testified as well, the Lincoln Park Historic Foundation. I will just say I travel Ashley Avenue regularly. There's not enough infrastructure there. I have concerns about this one, this area. And I know that we're trying to build density on Stone Street, and that which I fully support. I just have concern about this corner. Colleagues, comments? We need to weigh in. Did you want to say something? Councilmember Valeri?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, you caught my my question, which was, I think the assumption that Ashley Avenue is working just fine. I don't think that's necessarily, and I say that as someone who lives in a neighborhood with a very similar street that's a major artery with down the middle. So I think that there are improvements that can occur. when you presented this to the Civic Association, did you present it as infill or as R60? Like, were you looking forward, saying this is what we're proposing? What do you think of the proposed? Or were you talking within the context of what it is zoned right now?
We were talking with them specifically about the proposed rezoning. So we spoke with them back in October, I believe, the first time, and then we went back to them in April. April 12th. It seems like longer ago than it was. But both times we were focusing on the comp plan's recommended rezoning. And the second time we came back with additional information. So some of the standards that we showed you all this evening, we presented to them at that meeting.
Gotcha. Okay. That was my question in my head. I will say that at many community meetings, it's very easy to get feedback from people that are maybe have misgivings about a project, and not always easy to get feedback from folks that really like an idea. So, I guess if anybody's watching me ramble, please email us if you like ideas as well as if you don't like ideas. But I could see this area being, I think it's a little tricky, but I do want us to do this right because not only does the community need it, but I'd love to just see a better use of all that space in the Lincoln Park community. So, thank you.
Just as I'm going to go down the line just to get feedback from my colleagues, but just a point of clarification. In terms of state law, and I did not measure this, I apologize, but what's distance between, like would state law apply to any of these properties that we just discussed?
The Housing Expansion and
Yes.
Affordability Act.
I don't think it goes up that far, but I just wanted to check.
3/4 of a mile.
It's close,
It's
but I don't,
close.
can we check that? Because that might make this a
Yeah.
moot point. That would be very helpful. Or we could actually look at one of the addresses and search. Councilmember Jackson, and then I'll go to Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. I've listened to this discussion, and I'm just uncertain. I would want more information about Ashlia Avenue and about the traffic patterns. I do support the RMD infill, but I'm just not convinced right now that the zone should change at this time. So I'm going to punt just because I want more information about it.
Councilmember Shaw, then Dr. Miles.
I also agree with Councilmember Jackson in getting more information.
Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would like more information, and I do share your concerns about the current state of Ashley Ave, infrastructure therein, and what exists on the other side, although this amendment doesn't necessarily address what's on the other side, but that's our stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fulton.
I'm sorry, I actually don't have enough to weigh in on this one right now either. I think I need to understand it a little more and get more information. I'm like struggling to look at maps right now to see what's currently in all of those places.
Sounds like a good
roadshow.
Yes. So it looks like parts of this would be 0.7 miles, like right at the edge of the property, but not all of it would go up to 0.75. So if staff could get back to us with more information, that would be helpful.
I can ask.
Councilmember.
Sorry. What is happening there in the middle of the map? Like,
some industrial, I think.
Is it industrial?
I think that's where you see the bridge, the pedestrian bridge.
Is that where the bridge is?
And then there's some industrial next to the pedestrian bridge.
Gotcha. Okay, so actually part of that is the bridge space, but there's houses on the one side south of the bridge.
So I think it's right here.
I see. Gotcha.
Bridge.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then you have industrial here.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Never mind.
Councilmember Van Gracht.
So I have heard, much like staff has heard, from people in this area, including some of the people who are right in this area and around this area. And universally, it's been pretty negative with regard to what we're doing here. I currently do not support this. That being said, to the extent we hear from different property owners in this area that actually do support it, my view could change. So, but currently, everything we've heard from community members and as staff relayed is there's a concern. And when an entire community, including some of the property owners, have a concern about it, that's pretty universally something that we need to take account of.
Councilmember Fulton.
I do want to ask one question for clarity. We have heard a lot about Ashley Ave and it not being wide enough and that being a challenge, and hopefully we can do something about it. We just had a conversation about an area in Montrose where the road wasn't sufficient to meet the expected traffic, and one of the responses to that was any development we can use to fix some of the road issues. Would that also be true here?
But can I just say something before you, just if you can clarify, some of that stuff is not in our control fully because it abuts county property, but Mr. Mihalik, please opine.
Thank you, Mayor. As you look at Ashley Avenue on the map right now, the little bit you can see the south portion of it, if you will, is in the city. It's built to city standard just on that side, but the north side is actually the city limits, not in the city. We don't have right-of-way going into that area. So right now, it is a substandard roadway relative to city standards, but if and when the property north of Ashley Avenue was annexed into the city, we would ask the developer to improve Ashley Avenue that entire length to city standards with curb, gutter, and sidewalk, which would make it much more in compliance with city standards and provide a greater level of service for the neighborhood.
Thank you, that's really helpful, appreciate it.
You have another question on that? Okay, can I ask one more question to add context? That land is not land that would be like other places that we've talked about in the Montrose community. That land had previous gas on it. So there might be some mitigation. It's not necessarily like you're gonna get housing there right away. It has some issues, I think, from historically of how the land has been used. Is that right?
I don't know if I would go that far. I would just say there's a lot of unknowns on that property.
Unknowns, that's a better way to put it. Thank you. But not, generally, it's less control in terms of, you know, what the infrastructure improvements can be due to the unknowns. All right, team, any other questions? Are you good?
Oh,
that's for you.
We have, I apologize. One more proposed rezoning to follow up on. This one is up in the King Farm and Shady Grove planning area, proposed to be rezoned to MXCD, Mixed Use Corridor District, from MXE, Mixed Use Employment. There is a height differential here. We're going from an allowable 120 feet with the MXE to 75 with the MXCD. So the question on January 27th was just wanting to better understand the use permissions within the MXE and the MXCD. So the information that we have is that the MXE is more flexible when it comes to industrial uses, for example, alcoholic beverage production, light industrial, self-storage, whereas the MXCD is more flexible when it comes to auto-oriented and residential uses, examples being car washes, apartments, and townhouses. And that ends this section. I think we've answered some of this question, but our question was, are there any remaining concerns or questions related to these specific rezonings?
And I think we heard it along the way, but there's more.
Sorry, I was trying to jump in on the previous slide. I guess I'm confused. I don't see what would preclude having a taller building along 270. I feel like we're kind of giving up an opportunity unless people really want a view of 270, and maybe you do. I'm no shame. But, you know, I think it makes almost more sense to have the greater height there. I understand the flexibility, but having more height along 270 to me makes more sense.
Thank you. Councilman Van Graag.
So when we had this discussion back in January, some of my concerns dealt with that exact flexibility. And I guess coming back to that issue, and I appreciate staff clarifying the questions, why are we making this change here? Because just as Councilmember Valeri said, we have the height. We're downgrading in the height, but I understand, is there a reason why we're looking at these different commercial areas to focus the flexibility? Is there a need in this area for that? What is the purpose of this adjustment? Because as we talked about, this isn't necessarily a down zone or an up zone. It's a adjustment zoning, because you're not necessarily, neither one isn't necessarily heavily more desirable than the other, because they focus on different areas. Where did the need occur that staff is suggesting?
It really comes from the comprehensive plan. I will say that this section along Picard Drive and also across 270 along Research Boulevard currently is all MXE. And the comprehensive plan recommended that the other side of 270 be retained to be focused on employment uses, and that this Picard Drive corridor become more of a mixed-use residential retail area so that it's more compatible with King Farm and the other areas on this side of 270. So it's really comes out of the comprehensive plan recommendations.
Can I ask a follow-up question to my colleague? This property, just to confirm, is this the property that has affordable units? Is it the apartment building, or is this a different one?
There is
It was a
the
hotel
flats at Shady
before.
Grove.
The flat, so it's effectively
area.
affordable, more affordable, as I understand it. Was it, I know that, I'm just reflecting, there was discussions about trying to support garden style or affordable units so that weren't displacing people in certain ways. Was that the intent of this? I'm trying to understand.
I don't think so. I think it's more recognizing that all of our zones were more mixed use in orientation, and that this one should be more focused on providing residential, providing retail opportunities, contrasting with the other side of 270, which has kind of larger office buildings and is more employment based.
Councilmember Fulton?
I know, so confused. I appreciate is there a way to have it both ways here? Like, I appreciate what Councilmember Valeri was saying about, seems to me you want tall buildings around 270 for a whole lot of reasons. So can we get the use requirements but raise the height limitations at least closer to 270? Is there value in that? Tell me.
Councilman Van Grack.
I mean, one opportunity is, the mixed-use transit district does provide that flexibility. I know it's, an adjustment, outside of the areas that we were talking about for that area. Do we have a zoning area that covers that has the 120 but has the flexibility more that the MXCD?
So currently, the MXTD does have a 120-foot height limit, and it has that flexibility. In this instance, the comprehensive plan is really clear about what the recommendation is, and it says specifically rezone from MXE to MXCD, which does create some constraints there. The thing that I think we could consider, if it's Mayor and Council's direction, is to increase the height of the MXCD zone.
We could also choose, like we did earlier with the property at Jerusalem Mount Pleasant, to not go with, just stick with the current zoning.
Correct.
Which gives us the higher height. Doesn't change it from what the property owner is expecting. And I'm also open to discussing it on our road trip.
Could be on the road forever.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a curiosity. So if you change the MXCD zone, the height, what would that mean?
The use standards would stay the same. All of the other development standards would stay the same. But it would change the height for that zone throughout the city. It would not just be on this property. It would be on any zone that is, or any property that is zoned MXCD in the city of Rockville.
Thanks.
Thank you. But the thing is that we can continue to have residential units on MXC and it keeps the 120. That seems like a clean, easy thing to just keep what it has, and that allows compliance with the comprehensive master plan. Just a thought, but who was first? I'm sorry, I missed. Councilmember Van Grack.
Just a I guess what I'm worried about, are there certain things that people would want to do with that property to help us that we're missing because if we were to stick with MXC versus MXCD?
I mean, one thing that I would say that's different for Picard than research is there are larger parcels on research. We're actually seeing residential interest on research and not Picard. So I'm not sure there's anything in particular other than there's just a series of 5-acre lots along here. So that's probably what you'll end up with is a series of 5-acre developments.
Thank you. Councilmember Fulton and then Councilmember Shaw.
I support the mayor's recommendation. That does seem like the cleanest thing that keeps the heights and keeps what I'm understanding is every likely use you're not taking off the table. So I think I would support that for now.
Councilmember Shaw.
I'm leaning towards supporting the current zone. I just had a question about the MXCD. It's intended for major highways and it's along 270. So is there anything special about that we should add to the current zone?
I mean, MXCD, the primary part of the city where it's located is along Rockville Pike, away from the metro station areas. That whole between Town Center and Twin Brook is all MXCD. So we do have some MXCD properties oriented toward 270 as well. So that exist or are under development currently. So I'm not sure there's anything necessarily that we would have to add or modify with the current zone to address it.
Thank you. All right. Dr. Miles, did you have a chance to weigh in on this one?
I did, Madam Mayor, but I associate myself with you and Councilmember Fulton on this one.
Okay. Were you in favor of this? Yeah. Okay, 1, 2. We have. Okay, thank you. Yes, so we're good. All right, I think we're good.
We are good.
Does
Thank you
anyone
so
have
much.
anything else they want to raise? Councilmember Valeri.
Not anything new, but I do, I don't know if we need to thumbs up it or whatever, but I would like to explore more infill zoning, as some of my colleagues have also addressed, because I think even just beginning that conversation would be helpful.
Thank you very much. Just a note, I think that what we have put together is great, but we also have to put together plans at some point of how we're going to educate would-be investors, landowners about what's possible, as well as following up with our residents and community members. All right, thank you very much. We are now moving on to mock agenda. Agenda item 13, mock agenda. We reviewed the discussion this morning. It is posted on our LPT meeting. Does anyone have anything else they would like to add? Okay. Dr. Miles, did I see your hand? Are you good? Okay. Old new business. Councilmember Valeri.
Okay, sorry, I've been doing a lot of talking. Today, we received an email about the resources that WMATA is sharing with jurisdictions around the Better Bus Network. This is a strategic realignment and consolidation and so forth. When I clicked on the link, I saw that, and also got feedback from the community as well, that there are signs up all along Veers Mill that the Q series of buses is going away on June 29th. The Q series is WMATA run Metro bus. and it is one of the most well-utilized bus routes, set of bus routes in the city. I sent an email expressing my concern and wondering, what's going to happen magically on June 29th for all that ridership. I would like to put forward to my colleagues, if it is okay, to direct staff, maybe to direct staff to draft a letter indicating that we have concerns with regards to this corridor in particular, and the suggested improvements, scare quotes around that, to the Q series routes. This is this is for a variety of reasons a really bad idea to downzone the area for buses, because we have not only a lot of folks who do not have access to a car per census data, but we also have a lot of RM students who utilize the Q series bus to get to and from school. So I'm a little confused. They seem to indicate that BRT will fix it. BRT is not coming on Beers Mill for at least a couple years, if we're lucky. So I would love my colleagues' support to direct staff to write a letter to WMATA on this point, and maybe we can get to a point of meeting and finding a better solution. But I feel like we have to move fast because the signs are up and people are really concerned.
Thank you. So last year, this came upon us where we were potentially going to lose the T2, which was a major connector bus for homes and employment. And we drafted a letter. So there's precedence for us doing this as a body. I would encourage us to do this, just so we can make sure that we're aware and advocating for the bus service. BRT, I think it's 70% design, and last I checked from the budget book when I asked the question. So there's still significant time before it comes, and it doesn't make sense to lose service before. So just want to do a straw poll to see where my colleagues are on this. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from staff for clarification? Okay. Thank you. And last week I mentioned the idea of sending a letter to some of the affordable housing, HOC, and the MHP. I just also wanted to note that for the awareness of my colleagues, MCEA and MCPS and the MCPS Foundation are interested in those kinds of projects to see how they can support teacher housing. So I wanted to note that, and I have also let Mr. Mihalik know that they are interested in collaborating on better understanding our MPDU programs and doing an educational seminar.
Good deal.
All right, anything else? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn? And I'll just say Feliz Cinco de Mayo. All right, motion? Who wants to, you guys want to celebrate here?
I move to adjourn.
Councilmember Fulton. All right, it's been made and seconded by Fulton and then Jackson. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All right, thank you.